Hi, Roxana. Hi, Adam.
Hey.
I was speaking to her this morning and she has her link. She just hasn't logged on. I'll check. I keep checking my email. He is oh,
All right, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine at 5 o'clock on November 13, 2024 in the council chambers at the Municipal Administration Center. We begin with roll call. Deputy Mayor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Blackwell.
Present.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councillor Hinchberger.
Present.
Councillor Prenger.
Present.
Councillor Steinoff Gray.
Present.
Councillor Stewart.
Present.
Councillor Williams.
Present.
I would like to acknowledge that for the first time in a long time, Councillor Stewart is not the last councillor to be acknowledged. And I'd like to welcome our newly appointed representative, Ward 1 Councillor Stelina Williams, who was appointed last Wednesday night at a special council meeting. So welcome, Councillor. Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we're meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation, whose ancestors were the first to inhabit, care for, and live on this land. We recognize and deeply appreciate the contributions that Indigenous peoples have made, both in caring for this land and shaping and strengthening this community, our province, and our country. As a public service organization, we are dedicated to learning and acknowledging Indigenous history and culture and are committed to actions that move us towards a journey of truth, healing, and reconciliation with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the Métis Nation of Ontario, and the historic Saugeen Métis.
Do council members have any amendments, additions, or deletions to or from the agenda this evening? And once again, I'd remind you to declare a pecuniary interest now or as it arises in the meeting in the general nature thereof. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I have a conflict of interest on matter 7.1A due to my husband's employment at Bruce Power. Thank you.
Adoption of minutes. I need a mover and seconder that the minutes of the council meet. Oh, the train just started. Okay, Councillor Steinoff Gray, please.
I also have to declare a pecuniary interest for 7.1A 7.1A, as it involves my employer.
Counselor Pranger, please.
I also have to declare pecuniary interest with item 7.1 alpha on the basis that my employer has an interest.
Counselor Williams, please.
I will also declare pecuniary interest on 7.1A on the basis that it is the employer of my husband as well as my own employer have interest in the lands in question.
I'd ask if there was anyone else, but there is no one else. So anyway, okay. One more person, we're out. No, we're fine. You can get down, you can get down to 2 people. Okay, moving on, adoption of minutes. We need a mover and seconder that the minutes of the council meeting held on October 23, 2024 be adopted as printed. Counselor Williams and Hinchberger. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. All right, so we move into a public meeting. So the municipality of Kincardine has initiated a comprehensive review of zoning bylaw 2003-25 in accordance with section 26 of the Planning Act 1990. Such review shall be completed within 3 years of the adoption of an official plan, which was adopted by the municipality of Kincardine in 2021. The purpose of the public meeting is for council to receive comments and feedback from the public, key stakeholders, and commenting authorities having jurisdiction on the changes, updates, amendments, and considerations presented in the comprehensive review. So this evening is the public meeting under the Planning Act. Of course, if anyone from the public has further questions, concerns, or objections about the draft zoning bylaw, they can be sent through the municipal website at kincardine.ca. And the commenting period does not close tonight. It closes on November 22nd of this month. And if you want to be assured of further updates, there is a sign-in sheet on the desk outside the door in the lobby just prior to the entrance for you to sign your name and contact information. So we need a mover and seconder that the council of the municipality of Kincardine hold a public meeting in accordance with 34 subsection 12A2 of the Planning Act, comprehensive zoning bylaw for the municipality of Kincardine, moved by councillors Blackwell and Pranger. All in favor? And that's carried. So the public meeting is now open, and the order of the agenda this evening, I'll ask staff to make a presentation. And then there will be opportunity to hear from members of the public, and then staff will have comments or questions. There will not be any decision made this evening. The comments will be received. They will be integrated as applicable by our consultant and staff, and the final draft will come back to council 11th of December. There we go. Dwayne, welcome. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. I appreciate council's taking the time tonight to go through our public meeting here. With me, I have Karina from the county as well as Nick from MHPC. We're here to just kind of guide the discussion for the public meeting and go through any questions and comments. With tonight, definitely want to receive comments, consolidate those comments, and take them back to put them into the comprehensive bylaw and any comments that we do get. We also want to formulate those comments in a format that we bring back to council. They can see in a format that Nick's going to prepare for us. So you can see what changes we've added into the bylaw, what comments we received, and then the validation of some of those comments to make sure that they do get put into the document where we're reviewed and make sure that we're satisfied that the comments received are all taken into account. Again, tonight is not the final night for receiving comments. That is open until November 22nd. And encourage all comments to be brought forth then so we can consolidate those in the attempt that we want to bring them back December 11th for hopeful adoption. But again, depending on the volume of comments and the number of changes, it's possible that we might still be consolidating these comments into a report. But the goal is to have everything wrapped up by the 22nd for public comment, so we can get a document brought back in front of council for hopefully a review and adoption.
Would you like to make comment on process or what we've been through to this point, yourself or Nick or Karina, whoever is appropriate, Dwayne, at this point, if you want to do like a brief summary of the process up to this date, if it's helpful. If it's not helpful, we can go straight into public comment, whatever you think is appropriate at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can everyone hear me okay? Good, excellent. So we've had the draft bylaw out for comment. There was the presentation. I was here at council a few weeks back. Then we had a public open house, 2 sessions held, and that was to receive comments and talk to the public. And then that was kind of a lead up to tonight. As Dwayne mentioned, there's comments received until the 22nd is when we're asking for comments to be provided. And then from there, come to council. Once the bylaw is adopted, there is a statutory appeal period and notice period. And then once that is that's run out, then the bylaw would be in force.
Okay, so at this point, we're ready to receive public comments. If any member of the public would like to make a presentation, you're quite welcome to do so. Please indicate, hold your hand up. I will acknowledge you. Please come to the microphone at the podium back there. State your name, if you would, please, for the public record. And then you'll have opportunity to make your comment. We begin with a participant who is online. Tessa Gerling is here from Inverhuron. Don't go away, I'll be right back.
Yes, good evening.
Hey,
Can
good evening.
all of
Yep.
you hear me?
Good evening, Tessa, go ahead.
Yes, okay, I'm not a tech whiz, so I'm just checking that all of this is coming through okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I am representing the Philosopher's Wool Environmental Preserve, PWEP for short, with the purpose of commenting on the comprehensive zoning bylaw review. We have identified a number of concerns with regard to the proposed land use designation of Inverhuron and the Lakeshore, and have submitted an alternative land use proposal to municipal and county staff with the intention of providing constructive feedback. It is worth noting that many members of the community share the concerns raised and support PWEP's proposal. For your information, we have also heard that many people have experienced issues with the municipal online commenting form. So as to our proposal, in summary, we are proposing to change Inverhuron's designation from the current primary urban community back to hamlet. In addition, we are requesting boundary adjustments that would reduce the settlement area. And finally, we are suggesting special policy areas to protect specific natural heritage features. Taken together, we hope that these measures would prevent destructive sprawl and safeguard fragile natural environments throughout Inverhuron and the lakeshore. I would like to emphasize that we see this as a positive opportunity. Inverhuron could become a conservation hub, building on what is already there, the provincial park, the Ontario Farmland Trust, and the historic heritage. We're inviting the municipality and county to work with intentionality towards this vision. By adopting a planning strategy that has as a concept the creation of a natural and cultural heritage area dedicated to conservation and environmental tourism in Inverhuron, Kincardine has the opportunity to chart a way forward for good growth and environmental stewardship. PWEP's proposal has been made available to you, so I won't go into further detail unless it would be helpful, and I am available for further discussion. In terms of questions I have for you, if it would be possible, I would like to hear your reaction to the PWEP proposal and know how you intend to address the concerns we have raised. And in particular, I'd like to ask if you can provide some clarification on the extent of the settlement area from a municipal perspective. Because one of our major concerns is the county's proposal to have the settlement area stretch all the way from north of Concession 2 through Inverhuron Village and down along the lakeshore all the way into Kincardine. The municipal draft map shows something different. So if you could please clarify, that would be very helpful, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Gerling, for that presentation. I will refer that question to our staff. Or our consultant, and Karina's here from the county as well. And we'll just hang on to that until we hear the rest of the public comments, and then we'll deal with the questions. And some of the other questions might be related to what you've asked yourself. So we'll just hang on to that one, but respond to it later on when council gets their chance to ask questions too.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment? Yes, sir. Please come to the microphone and state your name for the record, please.
Hi. My name is Bill Brown, Ward 1 resident. We were wondering if there's a way to get, in the old days, we call them track changes copies, just an easier way than having two really big documents and have to look at them page by page, side by side to compare, to find out what's new, what was changed. That would make it a whole lot easier for us anyway. So just a suggestion, and if there's a way that can be provided, we would certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Further questions? Yes, sir. Please come to the microphone. Your name, please, for the record.
Thank you. Andrew Johnson, resident of Ward 2. I first of all would like to just endorse, as another member of the public, the previous speaker. We actually requested a red line version, and that the response we had was that could not be made available. It makes it exceptionally hard when you have such a comprehensive document, and one that's clearly had a lot of work done on it, to actually figure out what on earth has actually changed, and so what is important and what isn't important. It turns it into a mammoth exercise. And that then brings me to the second point, which I don't fully understand at present, is the decision-making process, especially where things don't go as smoothly as one wants. In other words, the first stage of the process is you submit a comment, and hopefully those will get resolved satisfactorily. But where they don't, so the status quo remains, and it's then, am I correct in understanding that it is then put to a decision by council, and as a member of the public, you're then forced to resort to a process of appeal? Or is there some other mechanism which I'm afraid I don't understand? And I wonder if you could have that clarified for us. It's because the objective is, as far as possible, to make sure that concerns are fully and deeply addressed rather than pushed aside. I hope that's clear. Thank you.
Since that was more of a process issue, I'll direct that, I believe, to our consultant, Nick, if as Mr. Johnson commented, if the recommended outcome of a particular situation is not what the concerned party is looking to see what secondary options do an appellant have? Does a person have when they don't agree with it?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So we would obviously like to work with anyone who has concerns about the bylaw, so we'd provide responses to the comments that are received, and that'll go as an appendix to the staff report that goes with the bylaw when it comes to council, showing how that's resolved. But we would respond to comments prior to the meeting as well, just so people know where we're headed for thinking. So we try to resolve those that way. There is the appeal process as well, but before that, council would obviously also have the authority to direct the bylaw be changed in a certain way too. So if there's something that does come up at the last minute, council does have the ability to change that too.
Further questions regarding the proposed bylaw? Further questions regarding the proposed bylaw? Further questions? Okay. Now we'll hear from council members who, just a minute. Maybe we'll go back to staff at this point. There were a couple of questions addressed, one particularly from Ms. Gerling, talking about some of the proposed changes to the development status, is that what you call it, of Inverhuron? Could you comment on the proposed changes or updates to their Inverhuron status, please? And maybe, I'm not sure if that's Ms. Smith or Nick who wants to touch on that one.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can start, and then Karina or Dwayne can jump in too. So yes, we did receive the comments the other day about the proposal for Inverhuron. There's certainly some overlap between the county official plan, the municipal official plan, and zoning. So there's some aspects that could be addressed through the zoning bylaw, particularly related to permitted uses and such. Other aspects would have to be addressed through the county process, or if there's updates to the official plan. So it's kind of a multi-pronged approach, I guess. So we're looking at that, and we'll see what we can do for the updates to the zoning bylaw. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yes, thank you through you, Mayor. So the county is also in receipt of those comments through our official plan update review exercise. And so we will take those into consideration, and I understand there's been some conversations in that regard, but I don't have the details of that. As it relates to the update to the Kincardine zoning bylaw, the county has a current official plan which is in effect and which has been guiding the current update to the zoning bylaw. And so some of those provisions, as Nick noted, could be incorporated, or changes could be incorporated through the zoning bylaw process. Others would have to be looked at the county level first before coming back to Kincardine.
So I appreciate that that is the appropriate answer at this time, but I'm going to guess that that's not exactly what the members of the Philosophers Will Environmental Group want to hear. How do they have like a face-to-face or what's the right means of exchanging ideas or furthering the conversation? Just so it doesn't sound it's disappearing into a political pit that goes nowhere. How does the conversation continue?
Thank you through you, Mayor. So for the county update process, we do have one-on-one meetings when they are requested, and so that request can be made through our planning team specifically.
And the municipal conversation through our manager or through yourself, Nick? How does that go?
Through you, Mayor. Yes, with the county, if they're having one-on-one, we'd like to be invited to the table so we're all working together on the same issues. So if there is a meeting that's established, we definitely want to be involved from the municipal side because we need to align with the county official plan as well. So working with the county to make sure our zoning bylaw aligns on their requests and issues, we want to make sure we work together at the same time, so.
The other question that was raised dealt particularly with tracking changes. And I acknowledge the the challenge of trying to compare a document from over 20 years ago to one now. Is there a spreadsheet of changes that has been made, or a way of identifying them for the public that's trying to compare the two bylaws?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can address that. So I had our office do a test of track changes to see what it looked like, and it created a big mess. So, but what we did find is that for the general provisions and definitions, it wasn't too bad. So what our solution is we're going to have a track changes version for the general provisions and the definitions, so people can see what, say, new definitions have been added or reworded, and same with the general provisions of the bylaw. And then for each particular zone, we'll have a table that just says, okay, your setbacks were this for, say, R1, and now it's this. So that'll be the way to easily identify that, because if you just do the document, it's a big mess. So it's not useful. So that's the way we'll do it.
Are those changes available now?
It's currently being worked on, so we'll have that available over the next few days.
Mr. Brown, you heard? Okay.
Yes.
Should be available.
Where will we find it?
We would provide that to municipal staff, and then it would be posted online.
All right, opportunity for council members to offer questions regarding the comprehensive zoning bylaw. Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you.
And we'll, just to keep the questions rotating, we'll just go, we'll adhere to the one question and a specific follow-up rather than, and if nobody else wants another question, then we can come back to you, but we'll keep the questions moving around the council table, okay?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I actually don't have a question because Mr. Brown asked it for me, basically, because as counselors, we don't have any special powers for being able to know exactly what's changed either, and I've been struggling greatly. So we all have this exact same issue, trying to review the document ourselves. So I am greatly appreciative of being afforded the opportunity to have that section with the track changes and the tables. So thank you.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I understand the concerns living down in that Lakeshore area. We were a little bit surprised. I was actually on council last term when we officially brought our new official plan, and the settlement area was never shown on the official plan that we approved. Only partial, which was north of, I think, County Road 15. So when we found out, reviewing the new county official plan, that this plan or this settlement designation's been around since, what, 2010, we were a little surprised. And I think it came to a surprise to a lot of the public. And there's a major concern. I've had a couple of one-to-one meetings with the county on it. We are going to continue on. That's the one area. I think the overall plan, you've done an excellent job. I've asked a lot of questions. And Mr. Brown, if you want to have a little bit of one-to-one, you can. I understand the plan pretty well by now, but I really do think that we are going to have a major discussion, like Tessa said, with this settlement area, because one of the things is that the secondary urban settlement area is giving a notion to developers that this area is basically, it's a little bit west of our County Road 23 towards the lake. Gives them an indication that it's a development area. But when you start looking at the existing zoning and the new zoning, most of it's EP, which doesn't allow development. So there's a little bit of a conflict there, which I think that, you know, through some collaboration between the county and ourselves and the public, we'll be able to maybe come to some sort of agreement. So that's more of a comment than anything else, but I'm quite familiar with that issue, and that issue is probably the number one issue for me in Ward 2. Thank you.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray, please.
Thank you through you, Chair. One, I would really like to thank Tessa for the time and effort she has put into looking at these items. And also the staff for the time that's going into the zone bylaw changes and the willingness to discuss this with the public. I think that's a really important thing. And if there's any way I can assist, I would be happy to lend myself to whatever activities you're doing, because I think it's really positive that we are able to have this dialogue. Um, a couple questions that I had actually, and I could be wrong in what I thought was changing, only because, yes, there wasn't really a grid of what had changed or track changes. But I wouldn't mind knowing what changes you did with regards to CCANs. Because when I read that documentation, I know I've seen a lot of different ones in the community, and it brought to mind enforcement. So I would be curious what changed and what time frame there would be for people who are outside of that zoning bylaw to get themselves in accordance with the zoning bylaw.
Just a moment, we just have to refresh on that.
No problem. I know it's come up at a number of different discussion points, and I thought I would just ask, because when people read this zoning bylaw, if things have changed, obviously they're going to want to know how long they have to become compliant, because when I looked, residential was a limit of 10 days, after which it would not be able to be on that property, and I might have misread it. So I would like to understand that change.
Thanks, Amanda. Through you, Mayor. Yes, CCANs have been added into the bylaw and been regulated a little bit differently than before. And one thing with the C containers, the key is once this bylaw gets adopted, one thing to understand is that it makes the structures legal non-conforming. The key word is they must be legal. If they weren't legal before, they won't be legal now. So, but if they're legally permitted to be there, then they can continue to be there, and the timeline wouldn't affect it. It's legal. Going through the new provisions there are certain zones where they're permitted and where they're not permitted. Certain regards around visual screening, heights, lot coverage, specifically zones is where they've been really regulated. One thing of those with a C container, with the provisions of that use, if the C container the owner does elect to obtain a building permit, the C container ceases to be a C container and it becomes a building. Similar to what we do with C container homes, same principle. Again, that's through the building permit process, so then it would default back into an accessory building. But the CCAN provisions right now are very, I haven't gone through them in depth to speak to exactly which.
I don't need you to go in depth.
Sure.
I was trying to understand what steps folks who might not be in compliance needed to go through. And I think you've answered that. I don't know if there's a time window on how long people would have to become compliant, but that's something that can come out later, maybe through Q&As. I just wanted to ask the question.
Fair enough question, Councillor. And yes, I'll probably defer to Nick on the assistance on the transitional period for the new bylaw. Again, there is definitely an adoption period and there's appeal period and so on and so forth. So, but Nick will hopefully be able to detail that in more detail than I would.
Thanks,
Councillor Blackwell, please. Oh,
Sorry, I was just going to add a little bit more to that. So for the transitioning period, as Dwayne mentioned, once the new bylaw comes into effect, then it is in effect. So then if it was a legally established use, then it still can continue. I did want to mention just about the 10-day period. That's talking about if you have a CCAN on your property for temporary nature, like for loading or unloading, that's where the 10 days comes in. And then there's also time periods if it's on the property for, say, construction or something like that. So there's that as well. Okay.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you. I'm just wondering, we spoke a little bit at the open house about legal non-complying or legal non-conforming. And if someone's looking at the zoning map and it's a different perhaps zoning that exists right now. I'm just wondering if you can speak a little bit about how that might impact them. I know through the bylaw, we talked about 3.6 where continued uses and buildings, that kind of stuff, but perhaps to put a couple folks at ease who have contacted me about that.
I can start and then Dwayne can certainly jump in. So if it's, if there is a change to the zoning on the property and it all comes back to if it's legally established. So if you have, say a house that's legally established and there is a change in the zone that for whatever reason, maybe a house is no longer permitted, because it was already there legally, the house can stay. And there's provisions for if you need to, if you're expanding your house or doing some work on it, then there's provisions to allow you to continue to do that. It's just if it was not legally established, then that runs into some problems. But as long as it was legally established and okay to be there, then it can continue to stay.
Councillor Williams, please.
You referenced in your remarks about public comments, and I just wanted to confirm, when you receive public comments, you'll be including them in the report, kind of in their raw form, or how will you include them? And will you identify if they were acknowledged or addressed, and if so, how? Through you, sorry.
Thanks, Councillor. Yes, I can confirm. So the comments that come from the public, it's primarily through the online form, or there's also the ability to email municipal staff or myself. So we have the comments come in, and then we will include a table in the final version of the staff report that has the comment included there. If there's a number of comments that are all the same, we would just say, 10 people commented about this issue and say that how that's been addressed, but otherwise it would be individualized. So it would say what the comment was and then how we've addressed it. Okay.
Deputy Mayor Clark, please.
I wanted to start off by thanking you for undertaking this work. It's been comprehensive. So well done on that. I'm not sure if you've answered when the schedule in relation to the changes would be made available. So forgive me if you've answered that. I know that you said it's being worked on now, but I'm not sure if there is a time frame. And I raise this because I'm a little bit concerned. Section 34 of the Planning Act is very specific about having a public meeting. And they do this for the purposes of ensuring that there's proper and meaningful public engagement. And when it's raised by number of residents and or council members, that has been very difficult to understand and track the changes. It raises concerns about how meaningful that engagement can be. And I am mindful of how comprehensive this has been and the challenges with it. So that's why I preface my remarks with thanking you for undertaking that. But equally, in order to ensure that we really follow the spirit of legislation, it's in place for a reason. It's important that those track changes are made available to the public so that there can be meaningful engagement. And I'm glad to hear that it's coming. I'm just wondering if you can confirm when that would be available.
Thank you, Councillor. I think I mentioned it, but anyway, it should be by early next week. It'll be available and up on the website by then. So we're working on that now.
Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, again, I'll echo comments. Thank you for all the hard work that's gone into this so far. I was wondering if you could educate me a little bit about 3.17, which is required number of off-street parking spaces. I've been reading a bunch of literature that might be considered kind of radical and suggesting that requiring less parking creates more affordability and opportunity for more housing density, something we're sorely in need of in the municipality. Could you just talk a little bit about how you arrived at the numbers that you arrived at in terms of parking and requirements?
Thanks, Councillor. I can start and Wayne can certainly jump in. We did look at parking through the updates for the bylaw, particularly related to residential, to see if the amount is too high were too low. We did lower the parking provisions more in line with one per unit. That's been really the way the trend is going, so that you don't have to have a whole bunch of parking, particularly if you have accessory dwelling units, then you may need to have like a sea of parking just for one building. So we've really tried to reel that in a little bit. And then we also did a review for other uses as well, and we did some other tweaks here and there. Particularly in the downtown, we looked at the parking for commercial uses and whether that's required. So we've adjusted that as well. So there's been a few updates done, and yeah, I understand about the residential too, because requiring 2-3 parking spaces for a dwelling is a lot. So
Councillor Blackwell, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Through you. One of the topics du jour seems to be tiny homes, and I noticed that there's an entirely new zoning provision specific to tiny home communities. I'm just wondering if you could maybe speak on that, what prompted that to be included as its own separate zone, and kind of what that might mean for the community going forward.
Thanks, Councilor Blackwell, through you, Mayor. Yes, in discussions when we were doing our review here, we had known that tiny homes had been brought into the building code. Also, we've had some interest in areas from developers for tiny home communities. And in going forward with that, it made sense to introduce a tiny home zoning provision that basically forms a guiding principle on what we can look at for tiny homes. And it also specifies some minimum lot areas, excuse me, and some setbacks to go with the proposal. Now, we're not creating a zone based on a proposed development, but we're just putting the provisions in place so that we're development ready, that we have a baseline to go off of for that zone. If someone was to come in and apply for a tiny home community, we have some parameters that we can refer to. Right now, again, it'd be very difficult to establish a tiny home zone that would be basically specific or non-specific to each development. Each development will be unique, so there would be probably some opportunity for a site-specific zoning provision that maybe need to be looked at for a tiny home community, but at least we have some guidelines to go on. And again, with our official plan too, with densities and stuff like that, that we look at adding in commercial densities and percentages. We want to kind of look at going that direction. So at least developers know coming in, if you have, for example, a density of X number of units per acre, they know that coming in, so they're not guessing. And it helps streamline their applications and helps expedite their proposals.
Further questions? Councillor Stewart?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Just kidding you. I look at this comprehensive zoning bylaw, it's really cleaned up a lot of things. I look at it as individual plus developers are going to have a little bit easier time, and I think the time element between proposal and approval is going to improve. Would you agree with me?
Through you, thank you, Councilor Stewart, through you, Mayor. In having worked with the original zoning bylaw in my time being here, I think this is definitely a step forward. I don't see this being as restrictive. I see it being more progressive and assisting development and aligning more with the changes in the economic and planning environment that we see, that we didn't see, where some of the uses that we had in our old bylaw, I haven't seen one of those uses for 25 years. So going forward and removing those uses and updating them with current new trends, it opens up our permitted uses in certain zones, practically all zones, to align with the climate of what we're seeing for development coming in, which in turn eliminates a lot of the planning policies when it comes to, I need a zoning amendment for this permitted use, where we've expanded and included that as a permitted use, which was previously going through a zoning amendment for something that's, I would say, pretty mainstream that we would see nowadays.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, the last question I have is related to, I believe it used to be referred to as core commercial, and specifically around height of buildings. So in my last read of the zoning bylaw, I don't believe there was any height restrictions at all in the core commercial. And I'm wondering if you can speak to the proposed height under this bylaw.
Thank you, Councilor Blackwell, through you, Mayor. Yes, in the current zoning bylaw, there was no restriction on height in the downtown C1 core. With the review here, we've went through extensive reviews, consultations. We've spoken with the BIA, county as our consultant as well. And what it was determined is that we did feel a height restriction was necessary to maintain the flavor of our downtown core for both aesthetic and sightlines. And we put that in at 7 meters, which is typically 22 meters, which is typically your 7 stories. That would still align with a lot of the proposal we've received in the last 10 years, being 6 stories with rooftop amenity areas. So doing the 7 stories or 22 meters seem to be in alignment. But again, that's a number that we've looked at through staffing levels and consultations, but it's definitely something that we want to have input from the community on, because it does affect downtown core commercial development.
Councillor Stanoff Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. One question I would ask is, I didn't see anything speaking specifically to like short-term accommodations in the zoning bylaw, but I do, like, when I have looked, there's other places that have done so. I would just like to understand why we didn't look at that, and maybe it's something that will come later that we're not prepared yet with adding. If we've added an inclusion for tiny homes to prepare for those types of situations, I just wouldn't mind an explanation or, additional details.
Okay, thank you. And I will try and answer the best I can with a short-term rental. And I'm assuming you're referring to a residential zone that refers to the tenure of that residential use, which is still in line with a residential permitted use as a short-term rental. The bylaw will not speak to the type of tenure that you have for your rental home for your house. That's typically administered through a short-term rental bylaw, which we currently do not have. But that's not something that we could look at going forward.
Follow up, please.
Yeah, it was just a follow-up. The only reason I asked is because when it talked about boarding houses, it had a number of parking spaces you needed per rooms with a maximum number of incumbents. And so, given some of the challenges constituents have brought up with me on how some of these short-term accommodations are being used when you have large volumes of people for vacation, it made me question some of the residential uses. But I agree, the bylaw, if that's the best way and the right way to do it, I can leave it. It's fine.
Okay, I had opportunity to speak with our planning department earlier on, and the question I asked was, does this bylaw promote, in line with Councillor Stewart's question, does this bylaw promote healthy and sustainable growth in our municipality? And the response that I got at that point was, yes, it does. It steps away from some of the antiquated terms and policies and practices, and are moving towards a zoning bylaw that promotes growth in a fashion that maintains the character and nature of our community. Acknowledged there are some tweaks that still need to be done. Is it perfect? No, but we're working towards it. So I thank Dwayne and Amberly. She is not here to receive the accolades this evening, but she is deserving as well. Nick and Karina, thank you so much for the work. And at this point, I declare the public meeting to be closed. As we said, there'll be no decision this evening. The report will come back on the 11th of December proposed, hoping that we're able to approve the bylaw at that time. Counselor Steinoff, Gray, please.
Through you, Chair, just a clarification. I know the report's coming back. Given the fact of the concerns that Councillor Clark brought to light, would the public have another opportunity to ask questions through a public forum after that report comes back, once they've seen those track changes, or would it only be through the comments submitted?
We are directed to have a public meeting under the direction of council. We could have another one if it is the appropriate thing to do. Okay. For those in the gallery, thank you so much. I'm not sure if you're here for other reasons, you're welcome to stay. But that's the end of the public meeting for the comprehensive zoning bylaw. We have a delegation with Chandra Tripathi and Deepak Patel regarding Diwali Festival of Lights. I do not see them here at this point, so we will move on to our next agenda item. So I'd like to welcome Kelly Linton and Andy, oh my gosh, I forgot your name. Goldie, right? Goldie. To the table here to provide an update on the strategic action plan. So the on my agenda here, I have two options for consideration tonight. One is to receive the strategic plan as presented. One is to receive, well, actually, that's incorrect. One is to approve the Municipality of Kincardine strategic plan as presented. One is to approve it as amended. So we will receive the report from Andy and Kelly, and then council can make the determination which motion or other motion they would like to consider as part of our agenda this evening. Kelly, Andy, welcome this evening.
Pleasure to be here today. It's actually nice to hear what's going on with your municipality with the zoning bylaws and stuff like that. You guys are really doing a lot of good things here. So Mayor, members of council, pleasure for Andy and I to be here today. Oh, there's my thing. Okay, I'm just getting situated here. And it was a pleasure for us to do this project with you. I'm really excited about coming here and presenting what we worked on together. You know, we had two really good sessions. We had some really good discussions. You have a really involved and active council, and that's good for the municipality, and we like to see that for sure. It almost makes me miss being a member of council, actually. Almost. So I have okay, so you got that? Okay, perfect. So the agenda for today, I have about a presentation that's going to take about 12 to 15 minutes, but then I can answer whatever questions that you have on the full report that you would have got as part of your package as well. Want to go through remind us about what the project objectives are. First, talk about the key success factors that we initially talked about as to what we needed to make sure that we accomplish with this project. The approach that we took, what we heard, highlights about what we heard, the 4 goals that we worked on as a group, the strategic priorities and actions, and then talk a little bit about the next steps and tracking progress. So that's kind of the agenda that we have right now. Reminding us about the project objectives and the outcomes. The purpose of this project was to engage council and the senior management team to take a look at our goals and revise the goals, priorities, and achievable actions for the remainder of this council term and beyond. The outcomes that we needed to drive towards: incorporate input from the community, council and staff, develop clearly articulated goals and priorities, establish a roadmap for action that provided direction for budgets, business planning, and operations, and ensure a shared vision among members of council and the management team. So an ambitious project to do all those, to get to all those outcomes, but we really worked hard to get there. If you remember back a few months ago, I had initial one-on-one conversations with members of the senior management team and members of council, and you were pretty clear in your direction to my team. You wanted to make sure that we came up with something that was practical, realistic, ensuring that we weren't making promises and setting expectations outside of our sphere of authority as a local municipality. We wanted to make sure that we built some common ground among members of council. We wanted to make sure that we drove towards measurable action, which would enable us to effectively track progress against those actions. And you wanted to make sure that at the end of the day, we came up with something that was simple and concise, that provided really clear direction to staff using language that could be understood by all readers. So these were some of the kind of the marching orders that my team had going forward. And so the approach that we took to get to there was one of the one-on-one interviews, as I mentioned, that kind of got us going on this project. We received 355 responses back from the community questionnaire that we sent out, which was, it's good to get some of those key themes out. Staff questionnaire. We wanted to hear from the staff as well here on where they thought their priorities should be. Had 2 leadership team sessions, one in August the 13th, which seems like a long time ago now, and then another one on the September the 23rd. So that was the approach that we took. What we heard from residents, so we put the community questionnaire out, and there's more detailed responses on each question in the final report, which I can speak to if there's any questions related to it. But a couple highlights. One of the questions that we heard, what makes municipality Kincardine a great place to live? Overwhelming first response, 74% said waterfront is either their first, their second, or their third preferred choice. That was followed by 42% who indicated outdoors open space, parks, and trails as their first, second, or third preferred choice. So good to hear that from residents. Most important local government service to your household was fire and emergency services. No surprise. That was followed closely, though, by maintenance of the waterfront and outdoor spaces. And again, additional information on what came out of the community questionnaire is in the final report. From staff, we asked some similar questions. We asked them to rank the following challenges that they think require attention during this council term. And I do like asking staff that question for a project like this. And number 1 was invest in municipally owned facilities, and that was followed closely by housing affordability. So again, we wanted to make sure that we had a touch point with the community. So we came up together with 4 goals that are listed here. Goal 1, financial stability. And that was defined as establish a strong foundation, financial foundation, enabling the municipality to meet the needs of our community now and in the future. Goal 2, a welcoming and vibrant community, foster a sense of community, and provide an exceptional quality of life. And goal 3, a strong local economy and healthy growth. Pursue smart growth reflecting our rural small town character and support opportunities to live and work in the municipality of Kincardine. And the last goal, goal 4, organizational effectiveness, provide residents with good value for services and maintain an accountable and professional working environment. So underneath all those 4 goals, you have 38 specific actions. And these actions, we wanted to make sure that they were as specific as possible so that they can be accomplished. So we tried, if you remember back to the sessions, we tried to avoid using the words continue to. We tried to make a specific milestone there, so something that you could achieve. So we worked really hard on that. So each of those goals, and we want to go through each of those goals right now. I haven't added all the actions because there's 37 of them, so that'll take a little bit too much time, but we can have a discussion about any one of the 37 actions that are included in the final report. So under the first goal, financial stability, we had 3 strategic priorities that were identified. Number 1, taking a long-term evidence-based approach to drive budgeting, operations, and projects. And there's some actions that fit underneath that priority, that outcome. The second one is optimizing the value to residents of municipal infrastructure and assets. And the third one is pursue alternative revenue sources to reduce reliance on residential taxpayers. So some of the action highlights on the right-hand side there that we have specific actions around, and I want to say also specific timelines around, because that's important. I haven't included them here on this executive presentation, but they are included in the report, timelines associated with each of the actions. Reviewing and updating the asset management plan, implementing infrastructure renewal actions, integrate and making sure that the funding for those are integrated into budgets and forecasts. Take a look at all municipal-owned properties and facilities to identify the best use for those facilities and properties. Get a go-forward plan for the airport, along with costs, options and costs. And then look at effective governance advocacy strategy. There's identified in the action a few areas that you really need to pursue in order to make sure that your provincial partners are in alignment with where the municipality wants to go. So that's an important, when it comes to financial stability, you know that you can't do it all on your own. You do need your provincial partners to come along for the ride. Goal number 2, welcoming and vibrant community. 3 strategic priority areas there. Providing opportunities for healthy living with some actions underneath it. Working with our community partners to enhance the quality of life. Again, a recognition there that the municipality doesn't do everything. It's really important to build strong partnerships with groups within your community. And that strategic priority has some really interesting actions underneath that to make sure that you're working with your community partners to together try to achieve good things for this community. And then the third one is protecting our natural environment. Okay, then moving on to the third goal. The third goal talked to local economy and healthy growth. 3 priorities there: a thoughtful and well-designed growth strategy. 2, contribute to more housing options for people of all ages and income levels. And then the third one is supporting local businesses and jobs. So some highlights there, looking at your downtown design guidelines to make sure that they're effective. Go forward plans, looking at water, bringing water and wastewater to Tiverton. And again, part of a related action item there is to look at municipally owned property to see if it can be repurposed into attainable housing. So that's something that the municipality can do. It's within your sphere when it comes to housing. Look at consider the costs and benefits of the municipal accommodation tax, so the MAT, and or short-term accommodation licensing. So that's with the conversation that you just had previously, taking a look at that, moving ahead on that. Consider reducing development charges for commercial and higher density housing, trying to look at incentives to provide that kind of much-needed housing here in the municipality. The fourth goal, we looked at organizational effectiveness, and this had to do with all the internal processes and practices and policies. The first priority is to demonstrate transparent decision-making and financial accountability. We worked really hard, if you remember back to the language here, we worked hard on that language. The second one is continuing our day-to-day operations, make sure they're effective and efficient and focused on the customer. And the third one is really paying attention to your staff, recognizing and rewarding excellence among your employees. So we had some good actions come out of this one. A customer service strategy, including the use of technology to support community engagement, moving ahead with some key performance indicators to demonstrate operational effectiveness, efficiency. Complete a service delivery and organizational review projects to make sure that you have the capacity and the internal structure to be able to accomplish all the things that are in this plan, plus other things that you're going to need to do for your future growth. Make sure that you're looking after employees, improve employee engagements efforts, and establish a people plan to ensure that you continue to be an employer of choice. So good actions came out of that. So now I'm just going to talk a little bit about the final product. So the the document that you see, that's for really for internal use. What we want to do is establish a well-designed product at the end of the day that can be read by the entire community, understood and read by the entire community. So there's some examples that we've done recently, and so we're in the process of working on that right now. It'll be word for word the content that's approved by council. And the idea is that once council approves the content, that it'll be ready in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks. So we want to move quickly on this. Recognize that you're already halfway through your mandate, so you want to get this done as quick as possible, and make sure you start to track progress on it, which is the last deliverable is progress tracker. So we talked a little bit about this, how important it is not only to establish good goals and priorities and actions, but to make sure you're tracking progress against those. So based on the content that's approved by council, we'll pull together a project tracker tool that allows staff to present to council on the progress on every single action. So the 37 actions, how are we tracking against it? So a very simple tool that demonstrates that we're tracking, provides an opportunity to have notes why things are not tracking the way that they should be, or maybe you're ahead of schedule on some things. So who's accountable to drive it forward? What percentage complete is it? And what's the notes from the senior team, from your CAO back to council on when this is going to be done and any challenges that you see. And that's the end of my presentation. Andy and I are available for any questions that you have.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Are there questions from council members? Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I appreciate all the work that you've done, including the 2 sessions where some of the best exchanges of ideas amongst us all that we've had, and sometimes alleviates the frustrations we have in council meetings where we can't sort of freewheel ideas and exchange them. I've seen this now for, I think, 5 days. I think this is going in the right direction, but I still find some of the specific actions, I wouldn't personally consider them to be specific. And as I read them all, you can't help but see that there are financial implications. And I personally would need some time to map out over the next couple of years where some of these are going to fall and what it might mean. For instance, I would look under, I'm going to spend probably the latter half of my term probably focusing on 2 things. One's going to be affordable housing, and the other is going to be organizational effectiveness. So when I see an action like develop a fire services plan focused on managing risk and providing reliable fire and emergency services, that really is not sort of goal oriented, because I think what's implicit with that is once you develop a plan, you implement it. And with that comes a whole cascading notions of what you might actually do and what might cost. The one thing I completely agree with in here, and there's lots of opportunities for improvement or areas for improvement for those who are in the nuclear business, to under demonstrating transparent decision-making and financial accountability. Yet I'm not sure I would really consider 4.1 Alpha and Bravo, develop a customer service strategy and introduce simple and outcome-focused key performance indicators to track issues and outcomes to be lining up with that. I'm not sure that's transparent decision-making. I'm not sure it's financial accountability. It seems more to me like delivering on what you commit to do. And specifically, like if I look at B, I know that I've brought forward a motion to have us to start report things like service requests, reported concerns, what the outcomes, so that we can track them to completion, ensure that we're being effective and demonstrate to the public that we're actually acting on and following up on things. I can't tell right off the top whether that's what that's meant to address. And one observation I have in 2 years in council is there is a difference between how staff will interpret an action and a direction and how council does. And I'm not sure that we've nailed down the language here to remove that ambiguity when the time comes to assess whether something's been completed or not. Thanks.
Before we get to you, Counselor, thank you for the comments. Is there a sense of, I remember a wise counselor once said, we're kind of on a journey. It ain't perfect right now, but we're working on it. Is anybody that might be sitting in your chair approaching that? Or if you were going to say, if you're going to assess the completeness of this report, are we a place that it needs to be amended, a place that it needs to be approved? Could you, I appreciate the comments, but I did not hear we can approve it and work towards betterment, or we need to amend it before we get there, or what did we hear? Are you able to
Articulate? I'll
say
do my
that out
best.
loud? Yeah.
I would assess right now, like, if I had to put a number on it out of 10, this document here, I would call about a 6 out of 10. And I'm going to wait to hear the input from my colleagues tonight, but I don't think I would be in a position, if it were up to me individually, and it's not, there would be a sufficient number of amendments and clarifications that I would require that we would never get through them tonight, in my opinion. That's.
Counselor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, my counselor down two for me is absolutely correct. It's my thoughts completely. To try to go through this tonight would be impossible. We'd be here most of the evening. I could make direction, or I could make an amendment or a motion. I think this is a great opportunity. I think the council needs some additional time. I'd love to set up maybe a ad hoc committee of 3 counselors, and I would definitely include that counselor over there, Counselor Williams, to be part of that, to really understand, because you're new and you haven't really been here the last 2 years. But I think it'd be very beneficial for us to go back, have a committee of 3 from the council, and to come back to council with any suggestions, recommendation, include the whole council, have a tracking process, and then come back on December the 11th with maybe a plan that we can approve. So I'm not sure. I'll let the council talk about it, and then I'll be able to make a motion maybe. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. And I don't agree or disagree with your comments at this point. Could you offer a brief, just one recommendation, like to send the committee off is a process, that's okay. But if you were going to say, you know, we need to clean up this particular comment in section 1, 2, 3, or 4, can you give us an example of a, you know, a productive change, an amendment to the highlighted actions? You know, just get a sense of where you're recommending.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, it's wordsmithing time. And as Mike was sort of saying, or sorry, Councillor Hitchberger was saying, that the interpretation from some of these words, they could be interpreted multiple times by the staff. And there's a lot of dollars associated with some of these words that we're not quite into the budget, and they might think that they're automatically have an okay to hire consultants and things of that nature. So, you know, I have pages upon pages of wordsmithing just to change it. Maybe not take away the content, but just change it that it seems to make it a little easier for staff and ourselves. And I think an extra month of us sort of as a counselor to review it and come back, I think we could probably come fairly close to approving it on December 11th. But it's going to take all the council for input through a tracking mechanism. Just to give you an idea and everything else, is that goal 4 in this whole thing around 4.3, recognizing and rewarding excellence amongst employees. we only have one employee. I always assume that that is being done under that one employee through the staff. I don't know if it needs to come up to us to approve that kind of stuff. I always automatically thought that rewards or whatever type of thing has been handled already. And I'm not sure what the benefit of us to do that is really going to improve as a strategic initiative. I think that it's a great idea, but I'm not sure if we're really have the understanding of what could really be done. So, I would have maybe something like that would come up in budget, but in a much more operational budget that someone brings, and maybe it's our CO says that we're going to spend $50,000 on recognized employees. And that's all we need to do at that level. We don't need the detail, and I don't think it needs to be under organization effectiveness as a strategic initiative. It almost should be done already. And those are the kind of conversations that I think all the council would like to have amongst each other. And once we do that, we can come back and actually probably feel comfortable with approving it. Thank you.
Councillor Kavanaugh, you had your hand up?
Thank you very much. When you asked for specific things or general things that we could throw forward as just general feedback, I have two pieces. The first is that I think that a lot of the goals are very, very solid in capturing things with a little bit of word changing. One thing that did strike me as a concern is I'm a big fan of our strategic initiatives department. I think small but mighty, as our manager likes to say. And they kind of have four pillars, which is the nuclear sector, the local economic development, inclusion, diversity, equity, and access, and then physician recruitment are kind of the identified areas that we've already moved into in the past, as these are things our community needs. And we do a really good job in this report, to Kelly's credit, of calling out two of those things. I think the nuclear sector is clearly identified, and I think the economic development in the form of the CIP and business attraction is identified. The two things that aren't in the strategic plan that I'm worried just being excluded by their nature would lead down the line to undermining them would be the diversity, equity, and inclusivity, and the physician recruitment. And so if I could add a piece of constructive feedback to this, it would be that I'd like to see those particular existing strategic initiatives or previously identified strategic initiatives encoded in this new strategic plan going forward.
Councillor Stanoff Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just a couple general comments before I get to what I wanted to say. I completely align with what my fellow councillors are saying, although one thing I will say for Councillor Stewart is fostering a good work environment, I think, is something that we as a council also need to champion. I don't think we're exempt from fostering a positive environment. So I'll throw that out there just for reference sake. But I think the thing that I was concerned about is, one, we do have some solid goals in this report. So thank you for the time and effort that went into it. I really think you did an excellent job of capturing some of the concerns and considerations that we brought forward. I think where I'm taking pause when I'm going to approve something is in understanding what that means from our budget perspective and what things I might inadvertently be cutting in support of those initiatives that I'm putting into the place through this strategic plan. So I think that I would recommend for us to be comfortable. We could look at some of the language to ensure that we have really crisp goals. So if we can strengthen those, and then understand whether silence means absence or just how that rolls out in our budgetary process. That would be my ask. Sorry, thank you.
Would you like to speak to the thought process of staff regarding, and we've heard the specific examples of healthcare and diversity, equity, and inclusion, and Councillor Stanoff Gray's comments. If an item is not listed, does that mean it's not there? What is the approach taken by staff at this point in that regard, please?
Through you, Mayor. So there are many things that the municipality is mandated to do. That isn't something that we're going to capture in a strategic action plan like this. We have responsibilities that are established by the service council has already identified, as well as through provincial mandates. If we are providing a service, then there are certain standards we have to meet and certain standards that province says we must do. So things like operating roadways is not something that we're going to capture in a strategic plan. This is meant to identify where you want to go and how you want to get there over the course of the next couple of years. And I would offer that the areas where I would see the most fluidity or expect to would be in strategic initiatives. That should be the spot where special projects begin and launch and complete and don't necessarily stay forever, because they are either implemented within other components of the organization or have been launched through the community elsewhere. So in terms of council's feedback, I can certainly turn it over to Kelly and Andy for their thoughts and comments. But it doesn't sound as though council is ready to move forward with this at this point. And that we have been working towards considering these components within our budget, so it will require some additional work to update that as well, and we'll wait council's direction on where they wish to go.
So absence doesn't mean forgotten. Absence just means it's a service that we're providing. Status quo or minimum, the standards that we've established will carry on. Councillor Williams, please.
Thank you. I appreciate through you, Mayor, that I'm in this process kind of in the potentially tail end of it. And I recognize that a lot of time and energy did go into the preparation of the plan. And as I read it, it really did give me a nice snapshot of kind of where the municipality kind of sees itself going the next couple of years. But I do appreciate that a lot of these actions being new to everyone around this table, that there would be benefit of bringing it past the discussions today. I will add just a couple of high-level comments. I have been involved in developing and executing on a series of strategic plans and strategies throughout my career. And there is a couple of pieces that I wondered if there would be value in including either as part of this or as the next step process. One of them, and to the benefit of kind of being able to share this with the community, is really understanding what the vision and mission is. It was great to see goals, and perhaps there's a pre-existing one that is in place, but really what are the goals helping us achieve? What's the common vision that we all want to kind of be as a municipality, and how do we want to get there? And making sure that the goals align with that would be a really important addition. The other piece I'll add is just around the implementation. It's already been raised by some of my colleagues around the cost related to that. But also just really making sure that in the implementation of this plan that it's embedded in work plans. And I know in a lot of other organizations, the way that that happens is, through the CAO's work plan, which is then trickled down to the directors and so on. And so if there's an opportunity to kind of make sure that it's not just a reporting quarterly or whatever it is, but it's actually an integrated part of work plans would be beneficial. And the last comment I would make would be around costs, similar to my colleagues, understanding what the costs are related to the implementation of these, because an action is only as good as its implementation, and it can only be implemented if the right resources, both time and financially, are allocated to that. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Thank you for the ability to facilitate and allow us to undertake this exercise. It has been beneficial in many respects. My concern, perhaps, in a broader sense, is that there may have been some miscommunication or misunderstanding between what the strategic plan, to a certain extent, would mean. And I say that in that there may have just been cross purposes. It does appear that from the strategic plan, if it's adopted or accepted, that there wouldn't be the ability to carry on all of what has been maintained status quo to date. And I suspect that there would have been priorities set differently if it was understood amongst council that effectively this plan would overtake. And I appreciate the input from our CAO underlying and underscoring that in certain departments, special projects come and then they come to an end. What I do know when I speak particularly about the strategic initiative is that they have operated on a relatively small budget. They have done an immense amount, and it's no different than any of the other departments, but perhaps particularly they have engaged with the public with regards to things such as diversity, equity, and inclusion. When we look at the Seniors Forum, which has been a success over the last 2 years, when we look at a lot of the initiatives. So although in Goal 2 we have encapsulated community, it does have some concerns when I see that there are elements which have been effectively maintained over the last few years that are missing. So I welcome the opportunity for council to take a step back, to revisit, to review, with a clear understanding that not only is there costs associated with any of what we decide to go forward with, but clearly we have resource limitations. So not everything is going to be a priority, and understanding that what we decide strategically moving forward will overtake, so to speak, some of the initiatives that we have already had in place. It is worth taking a little bit more time, casting another eye, and ensuring that we, at the very least, have made an informed decision, because I'm not sure that the priorities would have been stated in the way that they were, in the fashion that they were, having understood the exercise. And I certainly do not place that on anyone. I simply think that we were at maybe some cross purposes. But I thank you for being able to facilitate this exercise and take us to the point, because there is a lot of good stuff in there. I think we just need to cast another eye over it.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I'd like to thank you guys for the work that you've done so far on this. One of the things that my husband often says to me before I come to council is he'll say, "Remember, you're one of 9." You know, it's not necessarily your plan always that's going to happen, and it's not all your dreams and aspirations that are going to get done in one term. When I was looking over this document, I was certainly excited, and then a bit overwhelmed, because there's a lot of goals in here and a lot of work. And I think one of my questions perhaps was about timing and timelines. And typically when a strategic plan is done, there's a time frame. So is this, you know, like a 2025 to 2028 or something like that? I was just wondering maybe if you could speak a little bit to each of the actions tend to have like a date or a quarter associated with them, and how, whether there's some flexibility for council to decide possibly here are our most pressing ones, and these are some more aspirational ones if we're able to get to it, or whether some of it would bleed into the next term.
Well, so if you remember back to the second session where we put small, medium, and long term, so I took those and we tried to put those in there. But the challenge was there was so many things that were short term, so we had to spread things out a little bit. So your CAO and staff have gone through the timing to make sure that that kind of lines up. And the other piece is sometimes you had to do one thing before you did the other. So there is a sequential aspect to some of the actions. So we tried to account for that. But then the team, like the idea is that you have something in there, and then just like one of the counselors mentioned, that has to be built into the work plan, so that's kind of your CAO's job. To do that kind of planning and to make sure that based on the capacity of your senior team that you can handle this stuff. Like I see that as a CEO staff role to work that into the work plan. So it really is just to get us started. obviously there's gonna have to be flexibility as she gets into there and realizes, well, we might not have capacity in this area, so we have to spread things out a little bit more. But for sure, some of the things they might have, they should go beyond, this term of council. Like if you don't have the capacity, there should be a time frame that goes beyond this term of council for sure. But the idea is that you put a date there so you can start to do some capacity, some realistic capacity planning.
Follow up?
Thank you. Through you. I'm just personally feeling like I'd like a little bit more time to review the document, and to do some of my own prioritization, reflecting on some of the things that I brought into the sessions and seeing how they're reflected in it. And because it is such a overarching and important document, I just personally would like a little bit more time before moving forward with it. But yeah, that's all I'll say with that for tonight.
Just hold that thought for a moment, Councillor Stewart. So you've heard the tone around the table. I'm gonna likely guess that if we put the motion up to approve or amend, I'm not sure either of those would pass at this time. I think we're talking about another consideration of the wording, the reprioritizing even what's in this strategic plan. In some sense, I'm delighted to hear that, because it is forcing our council to, when we started our term, our focus was like here. And for 2 years, it has come to here. And tonight, we're listening to each other and we're saying, no, we need to go here. And I'm wondering, through Kelly and Andy and through our staff, whether it is another sit down in the afternoon to have one of those serious conversations, or I don't want to say, I have no interest in telling council members to forward your thoughts to them and let them figure it out. That's not what we need to do. So I'm likely suggesting something that's going to blow our consulting budget out of the water, as long as you know that. But having said that, it is the most valuable document that we produce in our term of council, ahead of a recreation strategy, ahead of water strategy, ahead of everything strategy. So I'm wondering what council's thoughts are regarding moving forward in this process. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. I think that, through you, Chair, I think it's time that the council takes the lead on this with my learned other 8 members. And I think that we could really put this together fairly quickly. And I think that I would recommend, even to make a motion, that we do an ad hoc committee of 3 councillors. And those 3 councillors will review gold 1, 2, 3, and 4, work with the other councillors, and come back with recommendations within a month, which is December 11th, which is pushing this. But if we don't push it, we'll never get this done. But I think that
okay, was that the motion?
No, I'm going to tighten up the
You're
motion.
still
Yeah,
thinking?
I'm just thinking, but I think the motion is, if the other councillors agree, that we take this in as reference material for tonight, and we adopt an ad hoc committee of 3 councillors to bring in some changes, amendments, whatever, for a meeting on December 11th, the next council meeting. Thank you.
Was that the motion? Or was that still just gone? That was the motion. So there was a motion in there that we establish an ad hoc committee, 3 members of council, to bring recommendations back for December 11th. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Hinchberger, discussion. Councillor Stewart, please.
What I'm thinking is, this committee is really just, the haddock is just a focus point. We will put all the goals on a tracking process and let everyone contribute, but they will be there just to consolidate that and review it with everyone to bring it back on the 11th. If we don't get it done, I mean, if we go for a huge committee for 9 of us, we're just going to be back and forth and back and forth. We really need to really hyper focus and get this back to the staff, because everything, you know, budgets, you know, basically whether we're going to add more employees and everything else, this is a huge undertaking. Unfortunately, I think that Andy and Kelly were saying, it's too bad we didn't have this done 2 or 3 months ago. It would have been a lot easier, but we don't have the time. But we have to crunch the time now. And I think if we have this and we can present it on the 11th and we can agree to it, at least we'll have something for the new year. Thank you.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I agree that this is one of the most important documents we're going to have, because it provides that guidance, and I really don't think it should be done through a small ad hoc committee. I think it's something that we all need to discuss. I agree that we should be taking this for reference, based on the considerations that we've all identified, but it proves that we're taking this very seriously. But I do think that's a discussion that we have to have, whether or not we choose to have facilitation. I do believe that a discussion between the council whole, as well as the staff, needs to occur.
Councillor Hinchberger.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm trying to adapt here on the fly. It is. I agreed with where Councillor Stewart is going. I see the merit in what Councillor Steinhoff Gray is proposing. And to me, it's entirely about specificity or clarity. Some of these actions, I know exactly what it looks like. I can see it in my mind. I know what good looks like. Complete the Station Beach Boardwalk Rehabilitation Project. I know what that looks like. Promote active transportation features for all new residential neighborhoods with consideration for linkages to amenities and areas of interest. That is very open-ended, and I have no idea what good looks like for that. And so I'm going to align with what Councillor Steinhoff Gray has said, is that, and whether or not we need facilitation for this, we needed help in the beginning because we tried to form a committee and couldn't get it together. This doesn't diminish at all the work and help we've had, but now I think it's really our responsibility to take it from here and shove it the rest of the way. And I'm willing to suggest that, or to agree, that we give a stab at a special meeting that is basically us going over these 37 and attempting to, at least among us in the room, its first step is to get council aligned on what good looks like or what complete looks like. The next would be is communicate that to the organization, and the other I think will fall into place. What will that mean as far as budget, as far as scheduling over the next couple of years? One thing I would like to see is a map from where we are today, a roadmap that lines up all these things by quarter within it, because I find in my mind I'm trying to do it. And I think we need to visualize this chronologically. That's enough said.
One of my questions is always, where's the tipping point between where we are governing and where we are managing? And I want to ask our learned consultants down here if there is a purpose in not defining so tightly what success or failure looks like, so that we afford staff who are the professional managers in our organization, allow them to do their job. So I do not disagree with anything that I've heard on council so far tonight, but I want to make sure that we are not prescribing so accurately that we're not even doing our job anymore. Could you comment on that a little bit, please?
Yeah, I'm gonna comment and then and maybe Andy wants to comment as well because he has the CEO role, so he understands that side of it. You know, the strategic plan has to be a very strong alliance between your management team and your council. Because you bring a different piece of leadership to the table. Your counselors are your board of governance. They're your board of directors. But where does that end and management start is not always as easy as it sounds. And that became very clear in some of the sessions is that we really need staff to play a really strong role here because they're the professionals in their spheres. Your counselors, and this is a benefit to the municipality, bring a lot of professionalism to their jobs. Every municipality doesn't have that. And so you can go further as a council than a lot of councils can because of your areas of specialty. And that's a good thing, but it also could be a weakness because it pushes you into starting to do more management type things. When it comes to the terminology and the wording of the action plan, the action specifically, we tried to push as much as we could to getting as specific as we could during the sessions. But when we couldn't get a specific thing, some things were easy because it was a point in time. You had a project that you wanted to accomplish. It was easy. Other times, it means that you had to develop you had to have enough votes in the session in order to put something on paper that we were going to try to achieve that. And we wanted to go as far as we could, but in some cases, and you remember back to those sessions, some cases there was disagreement on what those priorities should be. So as a strategic plan, you can only take it as far as you got agreement in the session to take it. And so that's why you have to leave some interpretation to your staff, to your professional team to get to that outcome, but make sure that you're using their expertise to get there. And if you look at some of those actions, look at the costs, the options and the costs to do this. We don't know what they are right now. A strategic plan has to go before the budget because you have to identify what your priorities are and what your options are before you can integrate that into the budget. So some of the comments I heard about we don't know what the costs are, that's where we've tried to say identify the options and costs that you can then integrate into your budget that comes later on. So I think you have to be careful here. I think it's good that you want to go through this, and if there's an opportunity to act some of these actions, if council can do that on its own, then I invite you to get rid of some of them. But make sure that if you go down that path, you have a common thinking as members of council. We want to make this more realistic and doable. So some of these things, even if they're near and dear to some of our hearts, we're going to have to act because we know we only have 2 years left of our mandate. So if you can do that and put that realistic lens as a group, then that's a great next step. But remember, we're 2 years into this already. And so it's different things are important to each one of you. And that became very clear in the sessions is that, as the mayor said, you're still far apart on some of these things. And I think that's why this is a challenge at this point when we're trying to put a stamp on it. You're not there yet. So if you can take that time, just be as facilitate these sessions as deliberately as possible and drive towards making things. If your common theme is let's make it realistic, then maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough to get you on the same page.
Just want to add a little bit about where the strategic plan sits and where the regular operation sits. At the end of the day, I always use the analogy, you're driving a ship and you're trying to guide that. And that's what the strategic plan is really about, is guiding where you want to go with that. There's a whole engine system in behind with people doing all their day-to-day operational pieces. These are things that are above and beyond or what their day-to-day operational pieces. So as you talk about things that you're already doing and they're being successful, those are not things that I think you need to add into the strategic plan just because it may be the proper wording or something that somebody's expecting in the public. You're already doing those. You need to continue doing these. The strategic plan has not said anything you're not going to be continuing to do, just setting a priority as to what you still need to focus on moving forward. So I think it's really important that this then drives into the business plans, which is the CAO's position, role, and the senior team. Unfortunately, I think a couple of you mentioned that you're so close to your budget time, you'd like to have some of those budget implications. Typically, you would have this plan done 7 or 8 months ago. You would have had some preliminary budget discussions to where some of these priorities could sit. So I think it's really important. If council wants to kind of, to Kelly's point, remove some of these or clean up some of the language, but then I really think it's in the hands of the CAO to be able to look at that business plan and bringing forward additional reports or kind of understandings of where that's those actions should be coming forward.
So I know there are questions from council, but I'm going to ask slightly preemptive. You were the team that helped create the language and are going to create the plan overall. So I'm wondering if you are available to facilitate another conversation. And that is, I believe that we would be well advised to not to lean on your experience and tell us what to do, but certainly coalesce the ideas so that when we are having the conversations, it is under some professional leadership facilitation that we do that. That is a question that council will address before we're done the evening, I'm sure. Councillor Steinhoff-Gray, you had a question.
Yeah, through you, Chair, and I would seek our consultants' interpretation of what I'm saying, if you're in alignment or not. But for me, we obviously, as a council, are responsible for setting policy, but also providing governance. And when you have clear, like, actions and objectives, I actually think it helps you get out of the management side so that it becomes much easier to articulate whether or not that oversight function, whether you're seeing things being pulled through the way you're expecting them to, and whether or not there requires that step in. I think it just cleans things up so that we actually stay out of the management lane if we can do this in a strong fashion. And I know that we've all brought up budget, but there's the programs we're mandated to do. And as Deputy Mayor Clark has said, there's the programs that we do currently that we're not mandated to do. And I really think that as a council, we need to take a moment to consider what might not exist based on the new throughput that we've put into Origins, because I wasn't thinking about what would cease to exist potentially. And so I really do think as a council, we need that time to go through and look at that so that we don't make a decision and then pivot partway through our strategic plan because we realized we moved away from something else that might have been important had we realized that consideration. And that's not a shortcoming of the facilitation. I definitely didn't have that in my frame of mind. I absolutely should have, but I did not. And I'm going to acknowledge that. That's not a reflection on the facilitation. It was wonderful, just an acknowledgement.
Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. You asked the question of our facilitators if establishing what good looks like crosses the border from governing to managing. And I actually think, to Andy's point, that what we're supposed to be guiding and creating that definition of what good looks like is guiding to what Councillor Steinhoff-Gray just said. As a project manager, which our staff would be, if you don't have that definition of what your goal is supposed to be and what you're supposed to attain, then you don't have that established to set your sights on that, and you might set it lower unintentionally. Like, you need to actually establish that for someone to work towards, and I know that as having done it in the past. Like, you need that guidance from your upper level team. So I think that we actually do need to establish some definitions of what goods looks like. And we do need to get together as a group to talk about these actions and go over them and potentially refine some of them to establish that. I personally don't think we need that process to be facilitated. I think the facilitated group work we've done was excellent, and I really appreciated it. And I look forward to the final product once we get a little more refined actions in there so that you can work with that. But and maybe after we do that process, we might say, you know what? We've gotten it to 97%, but we do need like a couple hours with our facilitators. We can make that decision at that time. I think right now we should actually be meeting, like Councillor Hinchberger said, a special meeting, just us.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
I, through you, I think, um, I'm struggling a little bit here because I think in some cases, sitting through the facilitation was really reinforced how that we're still very much, apologies to Councillor Williams who wasn't there, a council of 8 very strong-minded individuals, and that sometimes we struggle to find what we feel is common ground. And so I guess my only feeling would be, I think a lot of work has gone into trying to distill some very strong visions into a document that's manageable. And I guess any reflection and amendments that I would suggest would be, I would be concerned, I think, if we're trying to strong arm our vision back into the document, because I think it's actually done a really good job of balancing all of those perspectives with some actions from staff that also need to be done. And so I asked for some more time just to review it because there's some opportunities perhaps for me to say, okay, no, that's something that I think needs to get pushed towards the end of the plan and be something that perhaps is on the radar as they move into a new term, as there's a new, that kind of thing, but that it's something that we feel we can do some preliminary work towards. So I guess that's just my concern is like, I would be a little bit concerned to feel like we're moving backwards in the process as opposed to further refinement if it feels necessary. I just want to have a little bit more time specifically around the timelines because I feel like it's a bit ambitious knowing or having sat in this chair for 2 years and knowing how long and challenging some of these things can be. I would just be concerned about if we're all approaching it again with like, well, my thing didn't make it in, or how do I advocate for the thing that I wanted more loudly? I'm not sure. I get concerned about that because I think it was a really difficult process over the 2 sessions to try to find that common ground. And I think it was a fairly successful outcome.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I find that, trying to do 38 action items in 2 years is absolutely enormous. From my previous experience on council, if we can pick 4 to 5 priorities and really agree to it, and there's always, disagreements, but, and if you can drive those, you're going to have a successful term. It's very difficult to do a lot of this. You got to remember the staff is doing operational day to day. That's almost a full-time job. These are a lot on top of that operational side, that providing the basic service to our community. And to try to look through, and this is what I was looking through in the last 5 days, like my fellow counselor saying, it was just overwhelming, and I think it's going to take us, with an open mind, with an understanding that we're not going to have our pet projects, but we're going to look at what's important to the taxpayers in our community and really drive this. I think we can come together with a very effective strategic plan and something that staff can implement, and we can actually have an outcome that really looks favorable for our community. But it's going to take a little bit of give and take. And I think we're going to have to do that, and I think we can be very successful. Thank you.
So we have a motion on the floor that we're going to address actually, and then we'll move forward from that. The motion is that we create an ad hoc committee of 3 people to gather, track, and advise council on the path or the language going forward. Is that something like what you had in mind, Councillor Stewart, sort of?
Yes, I'd be more willing to take an amendment. Do you want to include everybody? A special meeting? Well, look at that. Can I amend this? Friendly amendment?
So a committee of 9 now instead of 3? Or you can withdraw the motion and then we just start afresh if you would like.
Draw it, we'll do a fresh one.
Councillor Steinhoff, Gray, go ahead with the motion.
Yes, I'd like to put a motion on the floor for a special meeting, including all of council as well as the appropriate staff as identified by our CAO for inclusion, to review the strategic plan that has been provided. And I'm going to say, add any of the refinements that are required based on discussion and prioritization.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Prenger? Hello? I'm wondering what the staff availability or how we go about organizing, picking the date. Because like I appreciate the comments that have been made, you know, referring our first meeting in December where we might have the ability to approve this. So it means like the meeting happens relatively soon. We got to have public notice and all those issues that go with it. There has to be, you know, some clarity on what we're actually going to do in the process. So I'm looking at our CAO, wondering about what sort of time frame we can look at something like that. You and the clerk, is that like a week? Is that a Monday night, a Wednesday? So we're still in the discussion phase. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I know that we need to do prior work, but everyone has already scheduled the tent to be open for budget meeting. How long is that budget meeting? Was that a 6-hour meeting or a 10-hour meeting or a 12-hour meeting? But we could change the focus of that meeting to actually put together a plan, and then we could approve it the next night. But it'd have to have a little bit of work ahead of schedule. But we already have that date reserved in our calendar.
Legislatively speaking, can we have a document substantially complete on the 10th? What about public notification and that sort of stuff that we're going to be addressing it on the 11th?
Discussion.
Hello, where's Roxanna? Is she online here? Director
Yes,
Brown?
I'm here, Mayor. Sorry, I didn't hear the full question, but I'm not sure if the proposal is to move the budget meeting to an alternate date. But I would say at this point, the budget document itself of close to 200 pages or more is almost at the finish line and quite ready to be prepared and presented on December 10th. So I'm not sure if that's the question, but staff will be ready to present the budget on the 10th.
So I can't help but think we should have this done before the 10th of December. If we can coordinate it, which means that if this is what you want to happen, then you got to set aside stuff to be here. That's what we need to do. I'm sorry, I don't have my calendar with me. Do you have a council calendar that says? Go ahead.
On short notice, I would also just note that senior leadership has a lot of things that are scheduled in their own calendars. So I don't think I'd be able to confirm a date tonight. Certainly we would try to accommodate whatever council wishes to pursue, but folks are also in the process of completing a lot of projects at this point in time. So it will be a challenge to accommodate everyone's calendar, including staff's.
Preferable to have an evening or a day meeting for staff perspective.
Through you, Mayor, I'm not sure I can answer that without having conversations with the senior leadership team yet.
Can we agree that we're going to have a special meeting to have this conversation, afford staff the respect to pick the date or to recommend the date for us? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I'm just wondering if the budget is substantially complete for the 10th. Does this factor in, and is there such an urgency? I mean, I think the thought process behind this was that this factor into budget considerations, but hearing our director state that it is 200 pages and effectively complete, I wonder if this can take the urgency perhaps isn't as pressing as we had thought, in which case we can go ahead with the presentation on the 10th and perhaps leave this, there's no point in rushing it through if the budget is substantially complete.
I'm going to refer back to Kelly and Andy's comments regarding the importance of having your strategic plan, and even though the budget is coming substantially complete for the 10th of December, there's going to be things in there that we're going to talk about established by the 11th of December that project A, B, and C, that's not on the list anymore. So it may or may not come off the budget because of that. But like there are items that we need to identify specifically, as you have commented, it's going to have an effect on the budget discussion on the 10th, inevitably. And I think that it behooves us to have the conversation substantially complete before the budget discussion on the 10th. Councillor Steinhoff, great, please.
Through you, Chair. This is a question for our CAO. Understanding the constraints of our senior leadership team and understanding the time that they have allocated to other activities. I know with budgets approaching, year end approaching, I can't even imagine the conflicts on that schedule right now. Would it be worthwhile having the council meet to go through the plan, because we had the staff inputs during the workshops, and put together a draft which could then be presented with yourself and Jennifer, and then that could be brought for staff consideration and comment on any concerns with the direction that was taken? Would that be appropriate as a compromise?
Through you, to the counselor, I think the only challenge is if you're not getting the feedback, you're then establishing yet another meeting to have that summarized and provided in order to make the informed choice at the time. I think that's the only risk with that approach. If I can, I would also offer, staff have been paying pretty close attention to what council has been saying through this process in order to try and build the budget for 2025. So there are components of what we have heard through the facilitated process that we're trying to capture alongside with the council direction that we sought related to what kind of a target you were looking for in terms of an increase. So I also would just like to remind you that that is the balance that we're trying to accommodate with respect to council's direction, to try to not have a significant increase on the things that we can control in terms of costs, and still try to meet those items that council has indicated are priorities. So I just leave you with that, is that the budget document, as Roxana has already mentioned, there's been a lot of effort that has gone into that as well. And the feedback that council has provided through this exercise has as best we can, been incorporated into that budget because this is where it all comes together.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. The budget process is a long process, plus, I don't know if the other fellow council members, we don't really have to have it approved, I think, until, what, June 1st or July 1st? It's one of those days that the budget really, I think this is important, and we're trying to do too many things at once, and it's gonna cause a lot of stress and pain and everything. I think that, our CEO has informed us that the senior management's quite busy. So I don't really see a problem having a good meeting on the 10th, converting it into a strategic initiative meeting. And then we can have our council meeting on the 11th. And then if we do need another meeting to approve it, there's no reason why we can't have a special meeting in council to approve it on the 18th or the 20th. Is that correct? As long as we give notice to the public. Because trying to figure out this thing, and I agree with somebody who said, and I forgot which council member, we can have meetings prior to the 10th. Just us, the groups and everything, long as we have, if we're a quorum, we need to have Jennifer there. But we can have meetings so we come well prepared for the 10th. But I think it's going to be a nightmare to try to figure out the staff and everything. Since there's a meeting on the 10th and most people are agreed to it, let's just convert it to a strategic planning meeting. Final draft.
Comments? Councillor Stanoff Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. My only concern with that, and I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Stewart, is that in every other budget cycle that we've had, we've asked to see the budget at earlier dates so that we can get it into good form sooner in that process. And we've already made arrangements to have that budget ready for us. I think what I'm hearing, and to your point, is perhaps we align as a council as a first step, and then if there is time after the budget has been received, the draft budget, we can address it as a tack on the 11th session to get the staff inputs based on pre-alignment as a council, and we have the clerk available to us for a special meeting. That would be my recommendation based on where we are with resource constraints.
Day meeting or night meeting? Anyone who is available through, there's just a straw vote, available through the day? Oh, yeah. Available through the night? So it is, seems that we are available day or night. We have a special meeting as arranged, as best possible prior to December 10 by our CAO and staff. Councillor Williams, please.
Through you, I don't particularly see a risk in running the processes somewhat parallel if the administration has been taking the feedback into account through the budget kind of process at this, or through this process while preparing the budget. But I do want to make sure going into a full day meeting or whatever that looks like, that we have a bit of a plan on how this will be tackled, because you can spend a lot of time picking apart words and achieving nothing. And so perhaps we could confirm kind of what the process might look like during this discussion and what we really want to achieve. Because I'm also recognizing or being mindful that, if this strategy was developed with the somewhat of a budget in mind over the next 2 years, you can't add a whole bunch of things to it without taking some things away. And so how do we tackle, I guess, going through all of these actions and come up with a meaningful, collaborative product?
Thank you for that. It sounds really rude and tacky, but we're gonna just, we'll come back to that. But the motion on the floor is about establishing the meeting. What we do at it is important, but secondary to the motion at this point right now. So we are going to have a call the question regarding having a special council meeting prior to the 10th of December, arranged by staff, day or night, for and I'll even leave you the latitude, the appropriate length of time that we might need for that, and maybe a conversation with Kelly and Andy about what that looks like. All in favor of that? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay. Councillor Williams, did you want to have that conversation now, or is that something that our professional team of consultants can actually help guide our staff and us through the process? Like we can spend a lot of time, but they have got the experience about, this is, and Councillor Hinchberg even, commented about the wordsmithing and the more pointed direction.
Through you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would suggest that just helping give us some guidance on what kind of review or input that we should be really thinking about going into the meeting, even at this table would be helpful.
Mr. Linton,
If you want me to provide some thoughts, I can connect with your CAO and just say, if I was involved, this is what I do, and take it or leave it.
did that sort of focus, did that provide any clarity to your question, or were you looking for something more than that, Councillor? From my
I'm not really
perspective,
sure.
from my perspective, and you're all welcome to chip in. The focus of our strategic plan, as Councillor Stewart said, is still too wide. And there needs to be things that rather than several action highlights, maybe there's only 2 in each category. I don't know, but we need to be bold enough and respectful enough to say, I think we need to let this one go. This is where we need to focus. And okay. So I think that is broadly the direction that we're going to head in the meeting. Follow up, please.
For you, that's exactly the direction that I was looking for. I mean, as opposed to coming in with more actions or us adding to it, I think that focusing it to bring it kind of more compressed, that's great direction. Thank you.
Councillor Hinchberger.
Thank you. Thank you, through you, Mayor. I have this mental model of essentially now, if we use the annual budgeting process and how we look at capital projects, we essentially have 37 capital projects on the books. We go down them by exception. Do we understand the scope of each and when it's going to happen? It's like bang, 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 just like we do for the capital portion of the budget. That's kind of the picture I have in my mind. Some of them drop. I don't foresee adding. Right.
Councillor Blackwell, you had your hand up there early, or do you want to think about that question while Councillor Stewart talks?
Thank you. Through you. No, I think that there was kind of the similar conversation, which was, I hope to come to a meeting with some prioritizations or even just changing of timelines to say, I think I want to keep this in, but I want to push out the timeline or recognize that it's something that we'll get to if we can. So again, I think I'm just really cognizant of how challenging it is to bring together now the 9 of us into something that's consistent, and how my hope is that we are doing this on a very, very high level, and that we're not getting too bogged down, so that we can actually move forward with something that's a working document and that does allow for continued input from our staff to actually implement. Because yeah, I would just be I'm just concerned about that, because I think it's really close, and I don't want to show up with a hatchet when maybe something just like, a little, yeah, just a couple little things need to change. And I think based on the conversation tonight, I'm feeling a little bit unclear about how big of a hatchet some folks may feel is necessary. And and if there's maybe more support for the scalpel version, then certainly I think I would feel more comfortable going into that meeting. But that's going to depend, I guess, on everybody. It's just making sure that the scope of that meeting perhaps doesn't turn into the scope of this conversation, and that we can be pretty focused and and being able to just like bam, bam, bam. Yeah, no, we're really good. Here's a slightly amended version, a slightly more focused version, and we're off to the races.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. You're right. We really need to understand this. We need to read it versus the 5 days. We really need to, as a council, really spend the time, send away the people that interfere with us and really focus on this. So we come well prepared. The only thing I would ask, can we do this on a tracking system? So if we have comments that we can put them in red, you know what I mean? I can't do it myself. I'm not technically smart enough, but I think it would really help when we go through them that we have comments in red or something like that to each one of us so we can go bang, 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 and just sort of say, the date's wrong, how much do you think, boom, boom, boom. So is this doable? Put it in a tracking system, especially this content part?
You mean prior to the meeting itself?
Prior to the meeting, yes, sooner the better. A working document. Just take the municipality of King Cardin strategic plan content and just have that on a tracker.
You can copy it. I'll send you a Word.
You'll send me a copy? See, technically she can do that. You might have to send the mayor too. Thank you.
Next item on our agenda. We did already. Kelly, Andy, thank you for your wisdom, your guidance, your leadership. We do appreciate it. It is welcome to a growing municipality.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, there's no grief. We should get paid for the experience you got tonight, so. 5-minute bio break, please. Okay, welcome, council members back to the chamber. We'll get back at our work again. All right, so we have 3-hour parking limit on Queen Street. We need a mover and seconder. The council approved traffic and parking amendment bylaw to be in effect April 1st, 2025, and that $11,920 be included for consideration of the 2025 budget for the signage, communications, and legal fees for the implementation of a 3-hour parking limit on Queen Street in Kincardine every day between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. from Durham Market South to Durham Street, moved by Councillors Hinchberger and Kavanaugh. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Okay. This is 7-1 alpha. They said it like 3 times. So we had moved by Mike Hinchberger and seconded by Andrea Clark. Whereas municipalities can play a role in supporting sustainable community development, including addressing housing affordability and availability challenges. And whereas the housing crisis locally, regionally, provincially, and nationally has impacted our community, increasing demand for affordable workforce and social housing options, particularly for low and moderate income families. And whereas the municipality of Kincardine has been reviewing several municipally owned land parcels that may be surplus to the municipality's needs and could be leveraged to support housing solutions, thereby addressing one of the pressing needs of our residents. And whereas partnering with housing organizations, senior governments, and other agencies can amplify the impact of municipal resources in alleviating housing shortages, and whereas the municipality of Kincardine has an identified need for increased affordable and supportive housing options in the community, which is supported through the adopted Housing Action Plan and the Municipality of Kincardine Official Plan. And whereas the Municipality of Kincardine is working with the County of Bruce, whose role is to serve as a consolidated municipal service manager, with a mandate to support social housing, including employment and income supports, housing services, homelessness services and prevention, and childcare, children's and early years services. And whereas community partners have worked with the municipality of Kincardine to help inform a study which considers the use of municipal lands that could be considered surplus to municipal needs and support of affordable housing opportunities. And whereas the said study includes 705 Princess Street, Kincardine, Ontario, as a potential site to create new affordable and supportive housing spaces by working collaboratively with community housing providers, various levels of government, nonprofits. And whereas the Municipal Act 2001 permits municipalities to provide grants subject to restrictions in Section 106 on such terms as to security and otherwise as the council considers appropriate to any person, group, or body. And whereas the Municipality of Kincardine's Community Improvement Plan includes a surplus land program which identifies that lands can be awarded at a reduced cost or possibly no cost for affordable housing. Now, therefore, be it resolved that staff be directed to order a reference plan to delineate that portion of 705 Princess Street, Kincardine, that will become the severed parcel having an area of approximately 0.28 hectares or 0.69 acres. And that staff be directed to rezone the severed parcel from the institutional zone to the residential 4 zone to permit residential apartments as permitted under the R4 zone. And that staff notify the current tenant of 705 Princess Street, Kincardine, of potential changes to the property and advise them that any future lease negotiations with the current tenant shall consider the contemplated changes to the property and the possible future sale of the severed parcel for development of affordable houses. And that once the reference plan delineating the dimensions of the severed parcel has been deposited in the registry office, staff is hereby directed to issue an expression of interest for an affordable housing development on the severed parcel, seeking submissions that align with the municipality's vision and the concept plan included in the Flourish report dated September 16, 2024. Sorry, can you repeat that? No, I won't. Councillor Hinchberger.
Thank you, through you, Mayor, and I'd really like to appreciate my thanks to the CEO for helping us draft this motion. Thank you. I think despite diverging views on what solutions are, a constant theme locally, provincially, or federally is that we've got an affordable housing problem. I don't think that's in dispute. I'll try not to duplicate some of the things you say. So this is actually a process that's been in a progress for quite some time. In 2022, a housing survey was completed. It had a tremendous response, over 1,200 respondents. The housing survey results are available online. One of my colleagues, and I share the same, expresses our frustration at the amount of community engagement we get for certain things. So this year, I think for the budget, it was under 200. Last year was about 250. For the strat plan, it was maybe 350 to 400. For the Secord Monument, it was a little under 500. For this, we had 1,200 people. So they were asking people about housing availability, social housing availability, and senior housing. And the results are pretty resounding. Most strongly disagreed that we had an adequate supply. And then if they were asked whether we should use municipal incentives to support it, the answer was similar, strongly agreed or agreed. So in October of 2022, the previous term of council, one of their last meetings of that term, unanimously approved the Housing Action Plan. And further, in the motion, that financial implications of the plan be considered in the annual budget process. So as you mentioned, one of the themes in the plan was to looking at municipal lands. This is a process that we began, I think it was May or March of 2023, and proceeded through the rest of the year into 2024. And it ultimately culminated in the reports of staff and Flourish that were presented to council at our last meeting. The staff went through an initial sort of cull, kind of not suitable for affordable housing or housing consideration for, and then they had a subset, and it's available on the Map Hub. Then there was a final cut of properties, and this is what the group that included Flourish, representatives of the Women's House, Russell Meadows, Community Living, et cetera, looked at. And when they evaluated their final cut of properties. And the report lists each of them and how they evaluated them generally and where they ended up prioritize-wise from high, medium to low. And they determined that the municipal-owned property at 705 Princess Street, former W.E. Thompson School and currently leased to Bruce Powers, a training facility, was the top of the list. So as noted in the Flourish report, the two overriding themes from when they looked at it, which was, one, timely implementation of something, and to provide longer-term housing options. So I'm unsure where the use of the word transient in a recent letter to a media-related organization in their municipality came from. So this motion, from my perspective, it represents the next step in the process, create a distinct property, adjusted zoning to align with conceptual goals, and to request expressions of interest from outside stakeholders interested in developing affordable housing options on the property. I want to emphasize again what Flourish did for us in trying to show us conceptually what a process looked like. They applied a project that they had completed previously in a similar size property of land. So ultimately, it would be determined if this process goes forward. The outcome would be based on the expression of interest process. But I can imagine that the residents that might ultimately inhabit a final project could be represented by those who could include those who've needed to make use of the Women's House and are ready now to begin their climb back into society, lower wage service industry workers who may very well work in downtown business and support the economy, seniors on fixed incomes who may no longer be able to afford housing that is larger and no longer meets their needs, and they're having difficulty with the carrying costs going forward, and those with accessibility challenges looking to live independently, or some combination of all of these. So I think what might an expression of interest look like a bit? There's examples. We're not first to the party. We're kind of late to the party. And you can find examples on scales as big as the city of Toronto, the regional municipality of Waterloo, or the town of Prescott in eastern Ontario that has a population of about 4,000 people. So in a request for an expression of interest, we can choose to specify what we want to see happen. Some of the things looking at Prescott, you might say, well, you want those to express what's their proposed form of development, total number of units, built form, single detached, semi-detached, multi-story, etc. How are you going to make this sort of affordable? How are you going to preserve trees currently on the property? Maximize green space, that the design takes into consideration the fit and character of the neighborhood. So there's a whole lot, and usually these expression of interest or these requests for expressions usually come with disclaimers that the municipality is in no obligation to go forward with any of this. So I know to some, it feels like it's a done deal in a certain form. It's not. But we don't know. We're taking this one step at a time, and this is logically the next step. I have a bias towards sometimes micromanaging. I'm sometimes an amateur architect or designer. I don't have all the answers. This is the time in which we ask those who have the expertise in this area to show us things that some we've probably considered, some we haven't. So that's why I'm seeking council's approval to move forward here.
Council questions? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you very much. And through you, Chair, it seems that we've included everything, including the kitchen sink in this motion. And it's very lengthy and we have a lot of, things going on. We want to do a severance. We want to do a residential rezoning. We want to do, a plan in the future, and we want to do this. And have we even talked to Bruce Power about taking over their property and everything else? There is a process with this. And the process needs to go from A to Z, not A to Z all at once. One of the things is that the lower tier governments do not have the direct responsibility for housing, let alone affordable housing. One of the things that I would recommend highly, and we're sort of fortunate because the mayor does sit on the housing committee at the county level, which they have some responsibility of affordable housing. They actually contributed to affordable housing in our neighborhood in 2019 and 20, Penetangor Place. And that cost was $11 million for 35 rental units. So you see the magnitude. If we walk down into this area, I agree, we can support some of the initiatives at a county level and a provincial level and a federal level. But, where do we have in-house expertise on even planning? Severance planning and rezoning planning takes time and it takes money, and usually it takes outside consultants. I don't see a financial picture with this one, or even an estimated financial picture of even going in that step, whether we can even get a severance, and and whether Bruce Power is going to agree to this. Have we even had a meeting with Bruce Power is the question. So I think this thing is very honorable, and I do think that these social services are honorable. But this is one of the problems that we're facing, and we're going to face this in our strategic initiatives too. We're sort of governed by this municipal act, and the act doesn't talk about affordable housing. There's a reason behind it. We're supposed to be delivering basic services to the community. I agree with this would be great. This is a huge undertaking, and I think that from my experience, we did some development last term. And during the development last term, we tried to develop land behind No Frills, and we tried to develop land behind Sobeys. And if you look a little further down, we are loaning $2.6 million now on something that we thought was a good idea. Not everyone, but the council thought was a good idea. And now we have probably just under a $5 million loan with no revenue coming in and no perceivable revenue coming in for 5 years. So you do have to be careful of this. I understand there's 1,200 people wanted us to move ahead on this, but is that asking us to use tax dollars for this? Are we prepared to use tax dollars? We have limited amount of tax dollars for public housing. Who's going to operate this thing? I mean, there's so many questions on this. I know it's an honorable thing, but how do you move forward with this? Do we say, okay, just go ahead and do the severance? You know, and what happens, we find out we can't do the severance, and then we're supposed to do this. If I approve something like this talks about 4 or 5 different things. If you could make it just a simple thing, I might be able to support it. But right now, I can't support something of this motion because it includes everything, including the kitchen sink. I'm sorry. And I really do think we need to take this to the county level and maybe talk to Tanya, is it Dixon, who is the facility, and let her have some sort of understanding what we're going, and then work with partnership with her. They have the money. They actually allocated $1.6 million for land acquisition this year, and they're looking at another $6 million next year in the budget for construction, and another $7 million, I believe, in the following year. They're planning things long-term. I don't even know what the budget is for this thing, and, you know, I'm afraid to even ask, because you walk in, this could be really Pandora's box, and where do we have the in-house expertise to start to even develop something like this? Thank you.
Councillor Henchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I appreciate my colleagues' comments, but I think I'll answer, there were a number of them, so I'm going to try to make sure that I get to all of them. I think the estimate of what it's going to cost the municipality is much less than my colleague considers. As many of the reports talk about, through approval granted to us under the Municipal Act and our Community Improvement Plan, we have an option to sell at low cost or grant. I think the major financial contribution of ours is in the form of the value of the land that we provide. I'd like to make a mention about, I mentioned the groups that were involved in ultimately producing the Flourish report. I mentioned them all. The county was one of them as well. So they are aware of this, and in essentially, unless somebody tells me otherwise, they concur with it. There have been discussions had with Bruce Power to make them aware. The current lease agreement there expires January 2025. So there had to be discussions with Bruce Power to be had about the lease agreement, because it's expiring in 59 days, if my math is correct. On the subject, there's the pro forma, this is too big of a word for me, but the report from Flourish essentially had the financial breakdown. We're not building it. It's pretty clear in the report before that our intent is not to operate it. And these are the types of things that go in your request for expression of interest. We want the developer to come up with a development budget. What are going to be the costs, including land acquisition, disclosure of estimating operating budgets, including like a 20-year time horizon. Essentially, we're at this point where we have the land, and we want to get it to a point, and we want to hand it over to somebody, but we want to make very clear they understand what we want the outcome to be. And that's pretty much it for us. Now, I'm going to ask the CAO if she could just comment on the difficulty, what our authorities are, costs, internal, related to severing a piece of the property and rezoning it as you would see it.
Through you, Mayor, so the process for a municipality can be a little bit different. We have more flexibility than the average citizen, and so we are able to sever the land going through the process that is essentially described in the motion. We would work with a lawyer to sever the parcel and deposit that. And then in terms of rezoning, again, that would be up to council. So there would be some costs associated with working with a lawyer to do and a surveyor to get that work done. And in terms of our resources to bring that back to the council table. And then ultimately the development of an expression of interest. And I just pulled up the one mentioned with respect to the town of Prescott to have a look at. And I've looked at others recently, which are not too dissimilar from that. So we would certainly reach out to other municipalities for samples and examples so that we're not reinventing the wheel in issuing that. And we would also lean on expertise at the County of Bruce who are aware that this is a potential project and work with them to make sure that we're not missing aspects of this component. I would agree that the major contribution based on the motion that's been put forward is with respect to the land.
Thank you. Thank you. I just, if I might, Your Honor, or Your Worship, we have, and it was created many years ago, an Affordable Housing Reserve Fund. It was projected to the end of this year to have $56,000 in it. To date, our expenditures would be $15,000, to which we used to fund the Flourish report that helped get us to this point. So we're sitting at a part where we have $45,000 remaining in the fund that I believe could cover some of the incidentals described here, so that there really is no current or future impact to the taxpayer. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart, please.
I can see that through you, Chair, that we have a disagreement between two councillors, and that's what this is all about, is to have an open debate on this thing. I'm not quite sure when you start talking about land, yes, there is money available, it sounds like, for rezoning and things of that nature, but that's fairly minor. If you start talking about leasing, or if you start, leasing is something that I could accept. If you start talking about giving the property or selling the property or giving it away free, then you get into section 106. Now, 106 pretty black and white. There is some exceptions, but you'd really have to probably get a lawyer to really figure out whether we would meet that or not. 106 is very restrictive of what you can do and what you can't do with municipal property. Now, the only thing is that, and I think that it's important, if you have an assessment on the property, let's say it's worth, right now, the property is worth, on our assessment, looking at the County of Bruce and looking at the impact, is $1.4 million. And it has a tax thing, so I assume Bruce Power is paying us taxes of around $35,000. I don't know where that figure comes from, but that's what's on the county assessment roll right now and on their map. So one of the things is that, as Councillor Hitchberger mentioned, that we have 59 days left in the lease, and I haven't heard anything coming from our staff about whether we're going to renew it. I haven't really gone through, because I just recently received a copy of the lease, but are we even going to be able to start doing anything with Bruce Power actually having a lease? Do we just cancel the lease immediately? I think you have to give them at least 6 months' notice. And I'm not sure what kind of discussion's been going on between us and Bruce Power, if any. Thank you.
There's a few people in line.
Just with respect to the property, council had the direction with respect to investigating the surplus lands. When that initial report came to council more than a year ago, we had conversations because and at least identified that that particular property was a potential one. It was noted in our map hub as well. You might recall that Bruce Power representatives were here that day. They certainly are interested to know what happens with the property. But with respect to this particular motion, this is not the entire property. This is a portion of the property. So the lease discussions would be about confirming that this portion, if this proceeds, is no longer available for their use if they're using it at all.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Yes.
I'm sure you had your hand up there a minute ago, didn't you?
I'm not sure if it extends beyond the scope, but just a question for my fellow counselor. Why was this property selected in terms of limiting scope when there were, I believe, two potential that we could potentially move on at the same time? Is this an effort to concentrate resources and get one thing done really well, or is this some other reason?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I think you're almost replaying that I can visualize a question that I actually asked on the 23rd of October, because when I first looked at 705 Princess, I was imagining the whole thing at one time. And basically the feedback given was, you're inexperienced in this, probably best not to bite off more than you can chew at one time. This looks like a safe little piece right now. The other part raises some other questions. For instance, there's an existing building on there, that sort of thing in there.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Taking on board some of Councillor Stewart's remarks, I would say that it seems that there's a consensus that there is need for affordable housing, and I appreciate that in itself doesn't fall within the mandate of the municipality. That being said, the way that this motion has been structured has been concise and to provide very clear steps. I know that there is certainly some concerns from the public on a number of fronts, one being the public engagement and transparency. However, much of it's being taken from the Housing Action Plan, which was participatory with regards to the public and did engage the public. And one of the key factors I note with regards to this is that what is being asked for tonight is a small step forward. A small step forward in terms of there has been a property identified. We know what the next steps would be. There's no expression of interest. I think my fellow councillor Hinchberger has made that very clear, that we're not at that stage yet. It's simply really testing the waters to a certain extent. And Councillor Stewart, you have raised certainly some valid points about potential obstacles or challenges, and they're all valid. That may very well come our way. This is really saying we identify and acknowledge that housing is an issue in the municipality. I don't know that there is much debate on that point. And really the only factor or role that we can play is in relation to land that we are able to assist with. We're not building this, because once again, Councillor Stewart, that's a valid point. Those expertise don't exist for us, and that's not something we're going to take on. This is a matter of saying we were tasked with looking at surplus land. We have identified this as a potential property, and let's take potentially the next step forward. There will still be plenty of opportunity for comment, participation, and public engagement. That doesn't stop here. This is one small step on what will be a very long journey if it happens.
So if I may, the word that assisted in my coming to some sort of conclusion on this is in the very first paragraph of the motion itself. It says, whereas municipalities can play a role in supporting sustainable community development. In the work towards affordable housing, any significant contributions from any senior levels of government are significantly dependent on the contribution of the municipality. Like if we step away and say, well, that's fine, we'll sell you the land and we'll let you do all the planning, then the response from those fund providers is, well, no thanks. You gotta engage in the process as well. I believe that the contribution that the municipality might be called on to participate, acknowledging Deputy Mayor Clark's comments as part of the process. I think we are almost obliged in some respects to play a role in that. So I for myself am willing to take that first step in this journey. So Councillor Stewart, please.
I think the discussion's been pretty healthy, and I think that it's time to take a vote. And I think it's a recorded vote, please, because this is another ballot issue, I think, down the road. Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Stewart,
No. No.
Counselor Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Clark,
Yes.
Counselor Hinchberger,
Yes.
and Mayor,
Yes.
and that passes.
All right, we have consideration of bylaws. There's a debenture bylaw. We need a mover and seconder that the debenture bylaw be deemed to be read first, second, third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw number 2024-145, moved by councillors Blackwell and Hinchberger. Any discussion? Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I was just curious about timing. No one knows when the rates are going to go down, but if they do go down, do we have time between now and December, or is the timeline too short before when we need to complete that debenture?
Yeah, then you'll be facing fines, actually, if you
Then
don't
ignore that.
proceed.
Apologies.
Further discussion? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, this just goes to show you what happens when council sometimes does things in the past and it didn't prove out to, and it's unfortunate that this property wasn't developed. So, you know, unfortunately, we're actually going to have to put in another light and it goes nowhere. And unfortunately, also is the Smart Center has shown no interest in developing this. So we have well over $4 million invested with no opportunity in the near future to reclaim it. And this particular debenture of 2.6, it's at 3.49. It's over 5 years. I like the payout. It's over 5 years. And so that's $500,000 a year or more. So that's 2% of the budget. So, you know, when we're doing the budget, when we're trying to do planning and everything, realize that there's consequences to anything. And I've always believed that tax dollars are not used for development dollars. Thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. 2024 budget amendment bylaw per resolution October 9th, 2024, to accelerate a project for sludge removal from both Kincard and Tiverton Lagoon sites. We need a mover and seconder. What are we doing? We need a mover and seconder. Prenger and Kavanaugh, the 2024 budget amendment bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw number 2024-146. All in favor? That's carried. Motion to pass bylaws. We need a mover and seconder that the following bylaws be hereby read first, second, third time, finally passed this 13th of November 2024, which would be the traffic and parking amendment bylaw 2024-147. Notice that I changed the number for you then. All in favor? Mover and seconder? I don't know. Blackwell and Hinchberger, all in favor? That's carried. We get into the consent agenda. They're listed under the routine and are enacted under one motion, except for any that council member would like to withdraw for conversation either this evening or at a future date. Councillor Steinhoff-Gray, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I would like to pull out consent agenda item 8.1 alpha. Environmental Services Compliance Report, October 2024, Environmental Services 2024-29, and I'd like it brought back to another meeting.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. I have to scroll down here. So I'm looking to comment on 8.1A. DA, which is support for the Municipality of Kincardin's Accessibility Coordination Resolution. So just wanting to note and express my thanks to the Municipality of South Bruce Peninsula and the Municipality of Northern Bruce Peninsula, both for supporting that motion and hopefully continuing to advocate on in partnership with us at the county.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, 8.1 Alpha Delta CAO Department Q4 or Q3 update. I just want to pull out the volunteer appreciation ceremony that happened in September. The municipality enjoys a lot of merits that come out of those volunteers. We had over 164 that were recognized that night. And I just want to acknowledge that our staff did an excellent job putting on that event and making all those people feel appreciated.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and sorry to my fellow councillors. I have 4 of them, and they're mostly comments, and unfortunately, I don't think the Director of Public Works is on the Zoom, is he? Okay, I'd like to make the comment anyways. 8.1 AB, Bruce Power Letter Agreement. I just wanted to acknowledge that we have done the first phase successfully. And that's quite a commitment, and I don't think that cost us any money. We're going into the second phase, and there is some caution with the second phase. It's about $1.3 million, and our commitment so far is 300,000, just over 300,000. But we're responsible for any overruns of 1.3. So I'm hoping that we have an understanding of that. That's part of the commitment and everything, because that could hurt. But so far, everything's going extremely well to plan. The other one would be 8.1 AD, the CAO Department 2024 update. On page, I believe it's page 2, key meetings and training 2024 AMO conference. The second bullet was the Ministry of Education issues discussed. Kincardine District Senior School. Do we have any updates on that at all, or does the clown have to come out again?
Well, we're hoping that the clown is retired. However, are you able to provide? There have been, there's no information to pass.
That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
There's nothing.
That's all I need to know. 8.1 BC, Accessibility Advisory Committee. I'd just like a little understanding under the delegation 4.1, Steve Jackson. It seems to be, I know that we adopted the FADs, as a sort of best practices or anything else. But it's sort of an interesting thing that there was an endorsement or a motion made from this committee that the Accessibility Advisory Committee recommends that the Facility Advisory Design Standards, FADs, be incorporated into the Municipality Development and Services Guidelines as best practices. And, it looks like even the City of London has not incorporated that into their development practices. So I'm trying to figure out, why are we doing it, and what do you exactly mean by best practices? And it doesn't have to be done tonight, but I would like to sort of have an understanding, because are we going to take this up at a later meeting?
CAO?
Because that was a motion and second and approved.
Through you, Mayor, just briefly, this was a recommendation, and it was noted when staff brought forward the development guidelines that ultimately council approved what staff recommended, which was to maintain what had been proposed and not include FADs with respect to what is in this motion.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. The last thing I had is
Just
a
minute.
little,
Oh, just a minute.
yes.
I move that we extend the automatic hour of adjournment until close of business.
Second by Councillor Kavanaugh, all in favor? It's carried. Carry on, Councillor Stewart.
Sorry, and for the last one, 8.1 DB, County of Bruce. It was a resolution, the municipality support resolution for CANDU reactors. Under page 1, it says that whereas Bruce County is home to the largest operating CANDU facility in Canada, which generates significant economic benefits through employment, supplier contracts, and infrastructure development. I take exception to that because, as we all are well aware of, we are the home community of the CANDU system. And we are debating, and I don't want to go into the details, but I don't think there's the negative side of infrastructure. It's not all positive. And that probably should have been mentioned in the resolution, that we didn't fully agree to that because we're going to have a debate about the impact on our infrastructure having CANDU system there. So I'm just saying that we got to start to have one message when we send to our partners, Bruce Power, that it's consistent. We're telling them everything's great and we benefit from infrastructure development, and we don't. It does cost us. And so I'm just sort of saying, I know they're long documents. It's just a point that when I read that, I said, we probably should have said no to that one. Thank you.
So we need a mover and seconder. The council approve the recommendations contained in the consent agenda, except for several that were raised. And direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. So mover and seconded by Deputy Mayor Clark and Councillor Williams. All in favor? That's carried. Member of Council, general announcements. Deputy Mayor Clark. You go around the table, everybody gets a whirl at it.
Hometown Christmas this Friday. So looking forward to being out there and seeing everyone.
Councillor Kavanaugh,
No announcements tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray,
No announcements today, thank you.
Councillor Williams,
Sure. I just wanted to thank the community for all of their congratulatory notes and comments and well wishes. And I also want to thank fellow councilors for this past week and the mayor for helping get me up to speed on everything. And I want to thank the CAO, the clerk, and the administration for taking the time to brief me. It's certainly been a bit of a whirlwind of a week, but I know I have a lot more reading to do and a lot of engagement to do with the community. But I did come in today feeling quite prepared and ready to engage, and so I just wanted to thank everyone.
Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you. Through you, I'm not sure this is the right forum for this conversation. I think a lot of the Swifties may not be listening, but I did want to share that there is a 14-year-old from Kincardine named Grace who was able to obtain 4 tickets. I believe it's 4 tickets. Do you know? Okay, some tickets. I shouldn't say that. Oh, yes, 4 tickets. Apologies. To an upcoming Taylor Swift show on November 22nd. Her 10-year-old sister Eleanor got quite sick, was taken to the Kincardine Hospital over the summer, and was treated by Dr. Montpellier. Eleanor has since recovered, but has decided that she doesn't feel she can handle the Taylor Swift concert because of some of her sensory issues. And so she's planning to sell their tickets and give the money to the Kincardine Community Healthcare Foundation for the hospital redevelopment campaign. These tickets are valued at $7,000 per ticket. There's an online auction at the moment. People can email or indicate that they're interested in purchasing these tickets. It's for Friday, November 22nd. And so that is a very, very generous gift from a 10 and a 14-year-old to support our hospital. So if you like Taylor Swift and you like our hospital, that's an amazing opportunity for you to participate in.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you very much. And through you, Chair, I just want to take a moment here and thank the staff and the Legion and the private people that got involved with the Remembrance Day celebrations. I think they were very successful. They're very dear to my heart. My father was a WW2 veteran. He fought in the war and allowed myself and my brother and my sister and everyone around this table to have freedom of speech and everything, whether you agree with me or not. I think it's a great honor, and I think that we did our community proud, and it was nice to see such a good turnout. Thank you.
Councillor Pranger, please.
No announcements today.
Councillor Hinchberger.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. It's unfortunate that we weren't able to receive the delegation tonight, but Tracy and I are attending the fundraising dinner on November the 18th at the, I'm pretty sure it's at the Pavilion, in the spirit of Diwali Festival of Lights in support of the Community Healthcare Foundation. I don't know whether there's any tickets left or not, but if there are, you can get them through Brad Kirkconnell or Grandma Hood, or in town. It was at Mike Rage Basics, and where I got them downtown and I can't remember. Oh. Oh.
You think for a moment. We'll
Thank
come
you.
back to you. All right. And running sort of in the same spirit of the season, Guru Purab, which is the Sikh celebration, happens Sunday, November 24th in Underwood. They have a lunch up there, which is quite exciting. As well as that, South Bruce Grey Health Center has community engagement opportunities at each one of the 4 hospital sites in the corporation. The Kincardine Community Engagement is tomorrow evening, 6 o'clock at the Pavilion. They are there, the advertisement says, to answer questions about future direction. It's a little bit to deal with perhaps their strategic plan as well going forward, what the purpose and the outcomes of that corporate, of the healthcare provision in our community. So if anyone's interested, 6 o'clock tomorrow night at the Pavilion. CAO, please. Oh.
Harbor Rose. My apologies.
No announcements. Sorry.
Okay. So I need a mover and seconder. The council move into closed session pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act as amended for the purpose of considering the closed session minutes dated October 23, 2024, and a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiation carried on or to be carried on or behalf of the municipality or local board, specifically municipal capacity funding, Bruce Power, and further that council return to regular open meeting upon completion. Moved and seconded by Councillors Hinchberger and Kavanaugh. All in favor? That's carried.